and I work as admin coordinator and communication.
شكرا جمانة.
Thank
خليني
you,
أجي
Jumana.
أشارك على جان يلي كمان
Give the floor now to Jen.
كلنا بيعرفها بس
Many of you know her, but maybe
تونس ما
in
بتعرفها
Jordan,
كثير.
anyone from
فأجي
Tunisia do not know
أحكي
Jen. Go ahead, Jen. The floor is yours.
خبرينا شوي عن
And tell
برنامج
us more about
بس
our
قبل
schedule
ما
for today. But just
نتكلم
before giving you the floor, Jen,
حكينا
I would
على
like to
تونس ومن
ask the colleagues from Tunisia, from Lebanon,
إنه نعرف
and
أول
from
شيء
Jordan
البلد
to
يعني
present country by
شخصيا
country, and let us
وبعدين
leave the discussions till the end, if we still have time at the end of each session, so that we do not go beyond the time given to us. And I'd like to thank the translators who are with us every day, Joanna and Layal. And I'm sorry because I haven't thanked you yesterday. So thank you, Joanne and Layal, for helping us organize these meetings. Go ahead, Jan.
Thank you very much, dear Najwa, dear colleagues. It's a real pleasure to see you again on screen, and welcome to the new faces. Even though your faces are new to me, I know the work that you do and the work that you did in the last report we put together. We're very, very impressed with your work despite the pandemic, despite the restrictions and all the difficulties, economic, socio-economic, political challenges that you are facing in the MENA region. You did so well. And with that, my congratulations on behalf of PSI head office. Thank you so much for your hard work. I am helping Najwa and the team, Chahanaz and Jumana, as well as Asia in this project, as you know. And thank you very much, Asia, for your very, very kind words. And I hope I live up to this. And I really appreciate, of course, the support of SWEPC, our four Swedish affiliates, but for Bundet, ASSR, ST, and Vision for always being there for us and really defending this project against all odds. And as you know, we have really done so well in this project, despite the challenges that PSI as an organization faced. This year, we have always been on our toes, and we've really done a lot of excellent work. And I hope that has been clear with union to union and with the support. And we know that the fact that we are doing this project planning, dear colleagues, for the next 5 years is a really good indicator of their belief in us, their belief in the MENA region team to push this project and to create that change. And this is why today, this is about the theory of change. So it's a very apt introduction to what we are facing at the moment. The world is facing a lot of changes, a lot of really difficult changes and challenges. And as trade unions, we are at the forefront. We are the defenders of human and labor rights, quality public services, migrant and refugee rights, climate justice, trade and tax justice, and all these things, social justice in this world that we all stand for. And Mansour just showed us that we are never tired of fighting for these rights as you are there. And we bring solidarity in Tunisia as you are on the streets, and while we are here doing the more technical work so that we can do more active and really tangible work on the ground. So that as an introduction, I am very glad to welcome everyone. And Najwa, if I may just ask you to facilitate us throughout the agendas, because I know that I'm gonna do a lot of talking in the presentation and all these things, but we'll try to co-facilitate this so that everybody has a chance to speak and to contribute to this process. We have about 4 hours this afternoon, this evening to tackle all these challenges. And what the good news is that this is not a new project. It is a continuation of a really important project for PSI. And this project is among the flagship projects of PSI. And the reason that I'm here as a policy officer, but also your support to the project, is because this project is very much linked to our global policy. And this feeds into the work of our affiliates, the SWEPC, for example, they're learning so much from what we're doing in this project, and they're also able to share and use our materials to educate their membership. And that really is a very good contribution that this project has brought to PSI, not only for the MENA region, not only for the affiliates in the 4 countries, Jordan, Tunisia, Algeria, and Lebanon, but also for PSI Global. And as I speak, we have put the contributions of this project, the tangible work that you have been doing under fighting for the right to health, fighting for the right to organize, all these things that you have achieved into our shadow report of the Council of Global Unions to the UN Global Compact on Migration, which will be conducted the global review next week in what we call the International Migration Review Forum. And our inputs are very much there in the report of the global unions to the UN Global Compact on Migration Global Review. So congratulations once again. We're achieving all the key results that we are working on in this project. Today we have a quite big agenda, and if I may just, I know it's in Arabic, but also I just would like to share as well, so we can go through it. Okay, this is it. Yeah, and I'm happy that Jumana is here. If there are technical issues, she's she's there to help.
Sure.
Okay, so because CET is 1 hour ahead, so it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon our time here. It's 1:25 in the afternoon our time here, and that will be like 2:25 in the afternoon in your time. So we have already gone through the opening, and I suppose if there are no more longer introductions from the SWEPC, but you're very much welcome to make an introduction in addition to a message. I mean, to the introduction, you're very much welcome. And then we already had participant introductions. And Aisha, I don't know if you still want to speak and introduce the planning session, or you would just let me go over the agenda.
Jen, may I speak?
Yes, Najwa.
Jen?
I think that
Sorry. I think
okay.
it's fine. I think it's fine for you just to continue with your session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. We saved
Yes.
time.
Yes, I
Yes,
just
that's
want,
exactly what I'm trying to do.
okay. Jen, I just want to mention that most of the participants from the Arab sub-region were present when Aisha did the introduction to the TOC and to the planning session. So it is almost the same, but now we are on another project. Okay.
That's great. That's great.
Okay, so we can go and move to the second session.
I love this team. It's so efficient. So yeah, we never intend to repeat everything from scratch. We build on what's already there. So that's actually my attitude towards this project. So, despite the pressure, time pressure, resource pressure, we will not panic. It's fine because we have our building blocks. And I'm really glad to hear that a lot of introduction on the planning process and the theory of change has already been done. So what we propose in the agenda in the next session is for our partners in the 4 countries, if possible, to share key results and challenges from this current project. It's really to find out what's happening on the ground. We have to touch base because most of us, because of the restrictions of traveling, we have not seen you, we have not worked with you. Normally, we all work together, SWEPC head office and the union partners implementing this project. So it would be very, very useful to hear back from you. Just focus on some key results that you think that project has achieved and some of the challenges. It's important for us to provide us perspective as we move forward in the planning of and the preparation of this project application. And then we'll try to take on as
sorry, Jen, to interrupt you, but Maria is raising her hand.
Yes, sorry, because I could not see the screen. Okay, please go ahead, Maria.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if it's. I don't want to interrupt, but I think it's good if you, it's very good that you have, some of you have had introduction on the theory of change, and I guess most of the Swedish affiliates has been on different meetings. But since this is, the different projects have their different sort of scopes, so I think it's good anyway to follow the sort of plans so that we all have the same ground to stand on. And since I know that Jen, as I think even also Aisha has been doing a theory of change before, but none of the Swedish affiliates have actually been involved in that, and it's a bit complicated. So I just wanted to say that I think it's good if you just sort of give a brief introduction as well, so we sort of refresh where we are and so on.
Happily, Maria, I'm happy to do that as I did in the IDP project, because all of this, colleagues, is co-learning. We are learning together here, and we share our learning with each other. So I'm very happy to walk you through just very briefly what theory of change. So this is actually a story. This is a journey that we're going to go through for this new project application. Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. Shall I proceed with the agenda? Okay, let me just reduce the screen again. Okay, there, so I can see the agenda. Yeah, so we'll try to limit that within 45 minutes or so, but since we've saved time on the first section, we can, yeah, we'll see how it goes. And our time block is very clear. We must end at 18:30 your time. So we will be quite flexible in our grid. This is not a theory of change is more flexible than a grid. So we will follow more of our flexibility. So after we've shared from our partners key results and challenges, we'll take a break, and then I will do the presentation just very briefly on what theory of change is, so that we are all on the same page as we speak. And then you have all received the concept note, and I'm really happy to hear that Nina and the SWEPC are very happy with the concept note, and I believe that the Union to Union has also agreed on this concept note. And we are going to explain how we are transitioning, we're shifting from the log frame to a theory of change, from log frame to talk. So that's what we're going to do. And then we've done some staff work already, because this is not a new project. So we have started drafting your pathway of change in this project, our pathway of change. And that we've already set it out for you. But what we would solicit from you today, dear colleagues, especially from the four unions, from the four countries, the unions in the four countries, are your contribution in terms of what do you think would be the key results, because we need to hear from you what you think we can do and what we are willing to do based on the challenges that we have. And then some also to hear back from you suggestions on key strategies and activities, because that will really give us a good idea on how we're going to go about this. And all this will be summarized in a narrative. And what we try to do here as in terms of this session on the theory of change planning is that we're gonna do some breakout groups when you draft or when you put together the key expected results and strategies and activities. So, and then we'll come back and share in the plenary, and we'll have feedback discussion. And then the next session, we'll have the risk analysis. This is very, very important for us because this is critical for the project, that we understand the risks and we know how to manage them as we do right now. Najwa will walk you through this, but again, this is not a new process. We've done a very, very extensive risk analysis when we were together in Tunisia in planning this current phase. So we're going to use what we have and perhaps just update and validate it. And with that, we can wrap up, hoping that we have enough contents, and then the drafting begins. All right, is this okay for the agenda? Or I have to put back the screen. Okay. Okay.
This is great.
Yes, we are agree.
Thank you. All right, so Najwa, I pass over to you on the discussion of key results and challenges. Over.
اوكي شكرا جان.
Thank you, Jen.
As Jen showed you, the agenda. Can we have Jumana please the agenda back on the screen?
الحصة الحالية هي لحتى نعرف إنه نحن كان عندنا مشروع بالسابق.
We had
أكيد في نقابات جديدة
a project in the past, of course, new unions at the end of 2020 and 2021 joined the project. But we want, throughout this project, someone from every country to tell us about the results that we were able to achieve, and what were the challenges that the project faced, knowing that the project will end in 2022. Whom would like to start? And I want to ask someone to take notes. Whom would volunteer to take notes? If not, I will do it. Nisreen, Khulud, anyone? Unfortunately, I can't because I have no electricity. Okay, I will be taking notes. And we will start with Jordan. Yes, I will be taking notes as well, knowing that I am going to Ajlon, but I'll keep on taking notes as much as possible. Najwa is saying I will do so. Allow me to clarify, Khulud, before you start. We have sent you already an email in order to prepare this session. And I do believe that you have prepared in each and every country this session. And please do send us your reports related to the results and the challenges faced during the current project. Khulud, the floor is yours. Thank you, Ms. Najwa. The three unions met via Zoom and we have reviewed the project, and my colleague from the municipality unions sent the report to Jumana. I will be now talking about the project. We are talking about the current project, the project that didn't end yet. The project that we have conducted under activities during the 3 past years. As you've mentioned, we health, municipality, and the statistics union, and as coordinators of Jordan, we weren't present or we weren't part of the previous project, but we had some information related to that project. And these three unions considered during the Zoom meeting that migrant workers is a very important issue.
You are muted. Unmute, please.
اوكي سوري اوكي اعيد.
Shall I repeat? You were saying that the issue of migrant workers is very important, especially that in Jordan is an environment where it is very important to work on this issue, because you all know that we have welcomed a big number of migrant workers. We have the Syrian migrant workers whom are in big numbers. We have the Egyptian workers and as well workers coming from East Asia, whom are mainly domestic workers at home. So the municipality trade union conducted a campaign related to migration and work in Jordan, related to the rights of migrant workers and the importance of alleviating their rights and protecting their rights. And during our focus groups, we were very keen on always having a migrant worker participating to our activities. And we were able to understand then what they need. And we were able to understand that they don't have an experience related to their rights, that they are facing violations from the part of employers, especially those who work in the farming field and agriculture sector. And a big part of them were not receiving any salaries. I don't want to dwell a lot on that, so I will move forward by saying that during this meeting, we have defined 3 points to work on: social dialogue. Excuse me, says Najwa.
Excuse me, sorry بعتذر إنه عم بقطعك. جن بقترح إنه نحكي عن المشروع
I
الجديد.
do suggest to talk about the new project in another session, or do you want her to keep on going? Now she is mentioning, Ms. Khulud is mentioning the 3 points that they want to focus on during the period 2023 and beyond. Is it true, Khulud? Or for 2022? No, I'm talking about 2023, 2027.
Okay.
Shall I continue?
So sorry, Khulud, excuse me. Are you going to talk about the 2023 onwards, or are you going to talk about strategies for this current project?
سأتحدث عن إثلاث
I will be talking about the period 2023 and beyond.
Okay. If it's okay with you, can you hold on to that? Because once we presented our pathway of change, that is where you can actually see where it will fall very neatly. But thank you for presenting key issues, especially on the point of the non-payment of wages and the difficulty.
It's okay, no
Yeah.
problem.
Okay, thank you, Khulud.
شكرا خلود بس بعض الأسئلة يعني
I have
بتعتبري
some questions. So you feel that during the past 2 years, you were able to conduct awareness campaign, participate or push the migrant worker to participate into your activities, and as well defend their rights because they suffer from many challenges. They suffer many challenges. Yes, that's what we have done on the ground. As my colleague, as Jen mentioned, later on, maybe when you'll talk about the path of change, I will touch base on what we envision for the future. Yeah, sure, during the next session. Thank you. Mr. Ahmad, would you like to add anything related to Jordan? No, I think that my colleague have said everything. Thank you. We move to Lebanon. Isam, Nisreen, whom would like to present? I can do so, Najwa. I can talk about the current project, and then later on, we might talk about our aspirations related to the upcoming phase. First of all, I would like to start with what was achieved during this project in terms of awareness first and the capacity building, and at the level of studies and surveys that were conducted. At the first level, awareness, of course, this project raised the level of knowledge and awareness in the trade unions in Lebanon, and that was the first time that all trade unions participated. We didn't have any absence. All trade unions participated at the leadership level as well, and the results were very important in terms of getting to know more information, and details related to our work. That was very important because now trade unions know that we do have a big problem in Lebanon that no one focused on before. So it wasn't a priority for trade unions nor a part of their action plan. Second, we have worked on the awareness related to the prevention in the public services institutions, especially in terms of preventing corona, the COVID, and the need to have the vaccine and what are the preventive measures that we need to abide by. So we have worked on that, and the awareness related to COVID, its impact, and its repercussions, all that was worked on, and the results were very tangible on the ground, and even trade unions changed their perspective related to protection and the prevention from the COVID pandemic at the workplace. In terms of capacity building, here as well, we have worked a lot on the strength of the trade unions, and that was very important because trade unions were quite absent in that matter, and we have pushed them to think about their strengths and how they can use it in a better way at the service of their members. We have worked as well on making them realize the importance to be open up to other sectors in Lebanon and other trade unions in Lebanon that can have common points with the trade unions affiliated to PSI. We have as well worked on budget, how to study a budget and a recovery plan, and how to have an opinion related to that and face their repercussions. So through this project, the trade unions gathered and collected knowledge and expertise that we can build on for the upcoming phase. In terms of results as well, I will be talking about two main points or two main results that we have from this project. First, we were able to have a database that is quite acceptable related to the health situation
عصام عصام عم تسمعوا لعصام؟ أنا
عطش شوي عصام.
المؤسسات هيدي بعد انفجار مسموع؟
Can you hear me well?
عصام كثير منيح، تفضل.
Yes, now we're hearing you.
طبعا أضف إلى ذلك مسألة كثير مهمة بدأ
Another issue that is very important. Throughout this project, we have started to work on rebuilding the infrastructure of the trade unions. And it seems that unions are very enthusiastic to rebuild their infrastructure, and especially in terms of human resources, especially that now they have an idea related to organization. And based on all that, trade unions now are very keen to work on this subject, not only at the level of every trade union, but at the level of public services in general in Lebanon. So in general, I can say that the results are very positive, and during the last activity, we have realized that unions are now very convinced that our issues in Lebanon cannot be solved only at the level of institution or of one institution, and we need a national networking. Allow me to say as well that the issue of migrant workers, refugees, etc., was an issue that was not mentioned quite a lot because unfortunately, and because of the crisis that we are living in Lebanon, unfortunately, even the Lebanese worker doesn't have his basic rights. And I hope that in the strategy of the upcoming phase, we will talk more about the need to develop a quality public service that can be offered to everyone in Lebanon and especially the Lebanese too.
شكرا عصام. عندي سؤال كثير مهم
Thank you,
التطور
Isam.
من حيث
It is very important to mention the development that the trade union made in terms of rethinking their strength, etc. I just have a question. How was that translated in terms of migrant works, if you allow me, Jennifer?
على المستوى اللبناني
At the Lebanese level? Yes, in Lebanon. So it is true that we didn't have information nor data. We have conducted studies and the unions benefited in terms of building capacities at the level of studies and research. But these research covered as well migrant workers. How were we covering or reaching out the migrant workers? And we as trade unions, how did we envision this issue? Magnus have his hand raised as well.
Yeah, sorry, it was just for clarifications reasons, because there was the first point was a bit problematic with the sound about the health database. Maybe it could be repeated very shortly, just that part.
Yes, I would like to get clarification on that also, and this change in union structures. I know you're mentioning a lot about the participatory research, Isam, but yeah, we can discuss more of that later. This session is really just to flag key results and challenges so that we are on the right page before we start preparing the new project application. Go ahead, thank you.
الحقيقة إنه بالنقابات اللبنانية
In the Lebanese trade unions, and despite the fact that we don't have in public services migrant workers, but we do have a link to, with migrant workers through work contracts. And trade unions, because of the pressures exerted on employers, they were forced to grant basic salaries and as well social security for a big part of migrant workforce that can benefit from the social security, Syrians, Palestinians, and Egyptians whom have work permit in Lebanon. So this is a dimension of the support they have received. And on the other hand, the trade unions in the past didn't have a positive opinion related to the foreign workers, but now is aware that we should have a cooperation with the foreign workers so that we can cooperate and guarantee our common interests and mutual interest. This idea was not very well taken at the beginning, and especially that we have a lot of institutions that do hire a big number of migrant workers or foreign workers, and we have a follow-up on that with PSI. So the clash that was before the project is not there now at the workplace. And in terms of offering a public service for all the foreign workers and for all the foreigners that are here, unfortunately now public services are in a very bad situation, and that's why they aren't offered for the Lebanese nor the foreigners. So the absence of electricity now is impacting everyone. It is impacting the Lebanese and the foreigners, and it is now a common problem for the Lebanese and non-Lebanese. And hence, this is related to the governmental policies, knowing that most of the institutions in Lebanon collapsed because of the crisis that we have since 2019 up till now. I don't know, Najwa, if you have anything. Jen and Magnus, is the idea clear?
Okay. Magnus?
Magnus, is it clear?
Some of it became more clear, but I was asking you about the health
The database is not answered.
database. So that is not so clear, but
Yes. بتسمح لي عصام
ايه
جاوب
تفضل.
عنك؟ yes. نحن بالمنطقة الشرق يعني بلبنان
In
تحديدا
Lebanon, specifically, when we have started the project in 2016 or 17, some unions were reluctant or not aware related to the importance of their role to defend human rights that should include migrant workers as well. So the strategy that we have adopted, we have studied the situation on the ground, and we have figured out that we have an absence of awareness and we have a lack of information. And based on that, we wanted to conduct a study related to the situation of migrant workers in the 4 countries. So based on this study, we can have a strategy, we as a trade unions. And after, because of COVID and the exacerbation of the crisis, we felt that there is a need to talk about poverty, women rights, and informal work that Isam mentioned, as well as unemployment. So these information covered all the population entities, including migrant workers. So we didn't exclude any category. And the importance of these studies were that were participatory. So we had the data, the studies offered the data, and built as well the capacity of our trade unions so they can know how to improve themselves in order to face all these problems. And based on that, we had the idea of conducting the workshop related to the strengths resources of trade unions. An expert conducted this workshop, and we tried to see how trade unions can improve themselves by improving their infrastructure, their especially their human infrastructure, and review the internal structure of every trade union. I don't know if the idea is clear now, Magnus. So the lack of data pushed us to conduct many studies, many participatory studies in order to collect the information. I would like to add a point, Najwa. We have to take into consideration that during the past 2 years or 2.5, the Lebanese currency lost more than 90% of its value. The poverty is above 70% of the population, and the unemployment is now more than 50% in Lebanon. Most of the public services institutions collapsed, and their prices isn't up to 1% of their real value. We have a lack of basic services and needs such as electricity, water, and health. And I can tell you today that at the doors of hospitals, people are paying all the invoice, and those who can pay can go to the hospital, while most of the people can't, because no one in Lebanon now can have the possibility to enter a hospital because the money is unfortunately stuck at the banks. The depositors lost all their money at the banks. So the situation on the ground is very difficult, and that didn't only impact the Lebanese, but as well the migrant workers, whom are suffering a lot. And we cannot find a solution unless we have new social and economic policies. And we need as well that the trade union have again some of the rights that were lost during the crisis, and work again on fighting poverty. That will include, as Najwa mentioned, Lebanese and non-Lebanese, because the situation is bad for everyone, and unfortunately it is getting worse.
Thank you, Isam. If I may, Najwa, what was referred to, in fact, Magnus, as database is not a database. It is the collection of information and data
Yes,
that
not
we did
database.
we
Yes.
did in this participatory action research that we are doing, and the draft report is out, and many of those things that Isam has mentioned, I have not read the draft report myself. It's about 80 pages, dear colleagues, and they will be distributed to you once we have because this is still a very, very first draft and just fresh from translation, but you will see this as also. But a lot of I think all these things mentioned by Khulud and Isam are there in the report that
Yes.
Ghassan, our expert, has put together. So that is what we mean by data. It's actually the collection of both desk research
Information.
and participatory action research results
Yes.
that are there. So that's what it means. But Najwa, I was not very clear in what you said, that you had a workshop to look at the union structures, or is this part of the participatory action research workshop that you did?
Yes, it means that the project, I will speak in Arabic if you don't mind. المشروع ساعد يعني حسب
The
ما عم بقول
project helped, according to what Isam is mentioning, because in order to defend, or in order to face the project, we need to increase the capacities. And we had some sessions related to, if we want to do a campaign related to migrant workers, you cannot do this campaign unless you have a strong structure and a strong trade union. So in order to work and to succeed, knowing that the trade unions are there and working, but when you do a campaign, you have to rethink about the human resources that you have, the council, the representatives of trade unions at workplace, etc. So that is what we were mentioning. It is a process that we have conducted so that trade unions can work on this campaign that should be implemented this year.
Thank you, Najwa. I think we are all on the same page. This was mentioned in our 2021 project report. These workshops were part of the capacity building and organizing workshop.
Yes,
isn't it?
yes,
Okay.
exactly.
That's clear.
بدي اعتذر اوكي بدي اقول للزملاء بالسويد رح نعمل
For our colleagues in Sweden, we are going to write a report and send it to you because sometimes we are in different countries and we might use different terminology. So in case you have any question after the workshop and after sending the report, we are at your disposal to answer, not me, but the trade unions. Naufal, we will open the floor for discussion after this, after the three presentation. Allow me to say that Nisreen worked a lot, and I would like to give her the floor. Nisreen, the floor is yours.
اللي كنت عم بسمعه يعني
Hello,
أنا
everyone. I would like to confirm what has been said by my colleague Isam and what Najwa has said as well. The situation in Lebanon, the situation of migrant workers in Lebanon, in fact, initially was not a priority. It was not the priority of many trade unions because there was some kind of a feeling of a competition. But now, because of the collapse and because of the dire economic conditions and the very difficult political and social conditions in Lebanon, there is now an awareness and more knowledge about the rights of migrant workers. We have worked on focus groups. We have had focus groups throughout all the regions, and we have had Lebanese workers and migrant workers. But because of these very difficult conditions, all the workers are sharing the same problems because of the collapse of the Lebanese pound. Migrant workers, they used to get paid in dollars, and the Lebanese worker would get paid in Lebanese pound, but the Lebanese worker was able to cater for his needs compared to the US dollars. But now the US dollar is lost from the market, and the Lebanese workers are now faced a very difficult problem because they no longer have any liquidity. Same goes for the migrant workers. So now we are having some kind of solidarity between Lebanese workers and migrant workers. We were also talking about the health coverage for migrant workers. Unfortunately, as said by my colleague Isam, all of the institutions have collapsed in Lebanon, and we only have the private institutions or some private institutions that are still standing on their feet. The Ministry of Labor has said that any company bringing migrant workers should be paying in US dollars, what we call fresh dollars here now, in order to provide them with health coverage. And this differs from one institution to another, from one place to another, from one workplace to another. We can say that we have workers that are registered, but they no longer benefit because all the guarantors have collapsed, and there are migrant workers that are benefiting from the fresh US dollars being paid by the institutions for the health coverage. Regarding the corona pandemic, the Ministry of Interior has opened the platform for all of the migrant workers in Lebanon and for all the Lebanese workers so that they could be registered and they get vaccinated. But unfortunately, there was a refusal by the migrant workers to get vaccinated. There was a huge number of people refusing to get vaccinated. And this was a major obstacle. This was a major problem. We really needed to have awareness campaigns for the anti-vax, so all of the migrant workers anti-vaccination. We needed to raise awareness amongst them regarding the danger of not being vaccinated. And we had to talk about corona and to explain more about corona, but unfortunately, there were no programs. Maybe some of the programs have been created by the UN agencies, but there was no positive response from the migrant workers in this regard. The Lebanese state has opened the platform, just to be fair to the Lebanese state, it has opened the platform and vaccination to all the workers, migrant workers, refugees, Lebanese, everyone. So this is what I wanted to clarify throughout the programs that we have created. As has been said, there was more mobilization inside of the trade unions, and there was more knowledge about their rights, the rights of the employees and the rights of the migrant workers, because we're talking now about the same requirements, because now Lebanese workers and migrant workers are no longer competing. There is a common suffering between both parties now. So this is what I wanted to mention and to further clarify. And if you have any questions, I'm ready, of course. Thank you.
Najwa, may I just
شكرا
react?
نسرين. حدا عنده سؤال عن لبنان بالإضافة ل
Do you have any questions about Lebanon? other
Yes, I
than
just wanted
Naufal?
to react and flag that because we can hear like views that are not really in disagreement but actually in parallel. While Isam is saying that the we have to make sure that we provide the same rights, the same access, the same opportunities to Lebanese and non-Lebanese workers. Nisrin, on the other hand, is saying that there's no more competition and that they now feel that they have the same suffering. And actually, this is the always the key issue where we're really struggling in this project, that there is solidarity, that the suffering is common to both migrant workers and
Yes.
also refugee workers and the national workers. So this is
صحيح
really the
صحيح
main trend of the project. And not to worry, we are very, very conscious of this, that we are fighting this. It should be non-discrimination. It has to be universal access in terms of promoting organizing rights and access to quality public services. So I just wanted to flag that because it is a very important point as we finish this current phase of the project and as we move forward to the next project. And this is exactly why, dear colleagues, you engaged very deeply and actively in that participatory action research. It is really to tackle this point and how to overcome this challenge. Thank you. And Najwa, I know we have to be conscious of time. We have like a few minutes left and we still have to listen to Tunisia and Algeria, right?
Nobody from Algeria came, so we just have Tunisia. Unless Jumana, could you confirm Jumana إنه ما حدا إجا من الجزائر؟
لا ما في حدا من ألجيريا.
Okay,
No one is
okay.
there from Algeria, indeed. Okay, even though we have sent a reminder many times. Okay, so we move now to Tunisia. I don't know whether Naufal had a question for Lebanon about the Lebanese report. And we move then to the activities that have been implemented in Tunisia regarding migrant workers. Naufal, the floor is yours. I just wanted to clarify that the situation in the Arab region, we cannot hear him. Najwa is saying that as well. So we cannot hear him. Naufal, we cannot hear you.
سامعك نوفل أنا
تسمع
سامع
فيها؟
نوفل أنا سامع نوفل
الآن تسمع فيها؟
إيه
هلا
إيه
إيه
أنا
تفضل.
سامعك
تفضل.
قلت لك لم
So
يكن
I
لي
was saying that I do not have any comment on Lebanon, but I wanted to say that the Arab region is facing a similar difficult circumstances and hardships. We lost him, I think. Okay, he's back again. So, in fact, the local workers, domestic workers, migrant workers, refugees are all faced with the difficult circumstances.
نعم يعني ما كتير أنا عم بسمع واضح ما بعرف إذا
So we are unable to hear
جمانة
him, Najwa is saying. No, it's cutting in and out, Naufal. Jumana is telling him. Naufal, if you want, you can just turn off your camera and just keep your audio on. Regarding the Tunisian report, in fact, previously, we have worked on different aspects in order to implement the project. And we can summarize what has been achieved as follows. We have organized the migrant workers in the Tunisian trade union, and now we have more than 2,000 affiliates in the trade union, and this opens the way for negotiations with the state in order to get their financial and moral rights. And also, right after the last conference, there was a special department open for migrant workers that come to Tunisia. And also, we have created communication offices to get in contact with migrant workers in the places where you have many refugees, such as Sfax and other areas such as Tunisia, the capital. And also, you have networked with the civil society organizations in order to raise awareness and in order to launch joint campaigns related to migrant workers and migration. And so we've had joint campaigns with the CSOs, and the trade union was one of the main parties that have created the Migration Euro-Mediterranean Network. We have also vaccinated all the migrant workers, just as the Tunisians, the local Tunisians have been vaccinated, and this was free of charge. There was a total equality. And also in the health sector, we have developed the different legislations by issuing a memorandum and a newsletter that would confirm that we don't have to ask for the identity cards, and so you don't have to put pressure on the migrant workers once they ask for the health public service, just as Tunisians. And also, not to mention that we have had many encounters with the different migrant workers, and we have conducted activities to raise awareness amongst the trade unions affiliated to the PSI in Tunisia. And also, we have raised awareness amongst all the sectors. All the sectors were very, very active in dealing with the migrant workers, each based on their own context, Ministry of Agriculture, electricity, gas, etc. So in general, of course, the road is still too long and there are many matters that we have to work on, but this is what we managed to achieve previously in the project. Thank you.
شكرا نوفل. حدا بحب
Thank you,
يضيف شيء؟
Naufal. Do you have to add anything to Tunisia? Mansour is still with us, but again, he is in a demonstration currently
الجامعة العامة أو الاتحاد العام للبلديات أو
for the
فيمكن
General Union of Municipalities for the Ministry of Agriculture. Do you have any questions to ask to Tunisia? Go ahead.
ظاهر ما في أسئلة unless جمانة شايفة شيء.
Apparently, there are no questions unless Jumana, do you see any hands raised? No, no one. Okay, so thank you.
Najwa, I just wanted to say it was very, Nofil, thank you very much. It was very, very succinct. 4 points, very clear. New organizing is successful. You have new members now. Do you have numbers of the number of new migrant workers who have joined the unions?
I think he said 2000.
وصلنا إلى 2000 مشترك منخرط من المهاجرين.
In fact, we have up to 2,000 migrant workers members and that are affiliates.
Up to 2,000 into the UGTT or into our sectoral unions, our PSI unions? That is a question. Now felt that more than 2,000 new members who are migrant workers, did they join the PSI unions or into the UGTT directly? Sorry, I sorry if my question is a bit ignorant, but can help explain.
هناك خصوصية لأنه لا هو بالأساس 2000 عضو جديد في موزعين على
2,000 new members distributed to sectors that are affiliated to PSI and other sectors affiliated to the private sector.
Okay.
So it differs based on the workplace of the migrant workers, right, Naufal? And the trade union would differ. I have a question, Naufal. Were there any talks about allowing the migrant workers to establish their own trade unions? I think there were talks of that kind. So is it still the case now in Tunisia?
عموما هناك في تونس تعرف انه قانون
In general, in Tunisia, we have the law on having different trade unions, but the trade unions taking care of the migrant workers and are managed by migrants. Of course, regarding the Tunisian law does not allow them to have their own trade unions. However, we have found a solution in including them in the trade unions and to assume the responsibility inside of the trade union. They can be members of the trade unions, but they are not allowed to establish their own independent trade unions. Thank you, Naufal. Okay, so then the session ends at this point. The session related to the main results and the challenges. So we've talked a lot about positive results. In Lebanon, we've talked a little bit about the challenges. So please, if you have any challenges, it would be good also to share them and to mention them, especially that there is a new phase of the project that we are coming to, and we have to take those challenges into consideration. Of course, maybe we don't have time enough now to go back to those challenges, but please do share the challenges that you are faced with in the next session that is going to be facilitated by my colleague Jen. And if you have nothing else to say, then we are going to move to a break. A 10-minute or 15-minute break. What do you think, Jen? What do you think? Unless you have anything else to say.
Since it seems like we just started, can we go for a 10-minute break, dear colleagues? And then later we can give 15-minute break because yeah, it's just the top of the workshop. So maybe we still have the energies. 10 minutes should be enough for comfort and coffee break. Is that okay?
Okay, inshallah.
Okay, shukran.
Okay, we'll come back at 27 minutes of the hour. Okay, 10 minutes break. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Now we will move to the session related to the concept note of the project for the period 2023-2027, and the floor is for Jen.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I'm working everything electronically, so forgive me if I have some glitches between working within the electronic files. All right, so we come to this next session, which is really now the forward looking. The last session was just really flagging some important notes for us in terms of what we are achieving and what are the challenges, which are the same as we implement this 2023 and as we transition to the new project of the next 5 years. May I know if everyone has read the concept note? Okay, no reaction. That means everybody has studied the concept note. Okay, still silence.
جن أرسلناها باللغة العربية لكل
We have sent it in Arabic to all our partners and to all the stakeholders in the Arab region. So supposedly everyone read the concept note. Unless someone didn't receive it, please let us know so we can send it again. In Lebanon, we have sent it to everyone, and I have it printed as well, so everyone has it as a hard copy. Okay, Najwa? Thank you, Isam. Excuse me, Najwa, I don't know if Khulud is still with us, and Ahmed Al-Saili is not anymore. From Jordan. I'm here. I'm very sorry for being late. No worries. Khulud, have you received the concept note, the project concept note that we have sent with the questions that we were supposed to prepare before our workshop today. So you have received the concept note, right? You are muted, Khulud. Yes, I have received it. And after receiving it, the 3 independent trade union conducted a meeting, and we have talked about that. Now, what do you want me to do? Because I came late. No, nothing for now. Now the floor is for Geneviève, our colleague, and she will be presenting the concept note that we have already translated and sent to you in Arabic. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that everybody had received the concept note and had time to read and even discussed it, because we have to start out on the same page on this new project. And I suppose that you have studied it, and if you have questions later, we can refine it in the theory of change format. But now we have to first and foremost look at what we're trying to achieve in the next 5 years, beginning next year, 2023 to 2027. So the title of our new project, if you remember, the former project was building capacity. Now the title of our new project is about, is still the same, but now has gone broader, because we have learned in this project that we have to tackle these issues confronting migrant refugee workers and local workers holistically. So this is why in the next 5 years, we're going to look at what is affecting the region. What is affecting the region? And we can see 3 main factors affecting the region in terms of forced displacement, migration, and refugee flows. And this is about human rights, and this is about the climate crisis, and this is about access to quality public services. So that's why the new title of our the title of our new project is about unions defending human rights, climate justice, and quality public services for refugees and migrant workers in the MENA region. That doesn't mean we are not defending human rights, climate justice, and QPS for local workers. This is about solidarity work. It is part of this project. It is very much part of this work. Again, remember, this is about solidarity building that we are on. Everybody, all workers are in this together. So that must be an assumption that we should have. And in terms of our objective of the project, we are let me just, I'm looking through my printed copy. So what is the objective of the project as stated in the concept note? Our objective is to have strengthened role and capacity of public service workers in the MENA region in defending human rights, climate justice, and access to quality public services for refugees and migrant workers. So that is the statement of our objective. I just wanted to introduce this because this is the project that we're working on. The challenge right now, this project was written based on a logical framework matrix, because that was the template, that was the format, that was the methodology we used to work in the current project. But now we have to shift into the theory of change. And yes, what is the theory of change? Very briefly, because I know you must have heard a lot about this. It's really, because I'm very, very visual, so I would describe it as a theory of change is a thinking hat, okay? It's a thinking hat. For those of you who watched Harry Potter, who have children who are fans of Harry Potter, remember, they put thinking hats so they could be classified into the different schools in Hogwarts. A thinking hat is the way you think, the way you approach life, the way you approach challenges, the way you approach problems and issues. And the theory of change is about understanding what change do we want. It is about being together, understanding together what is the problem, what is the challenge that we are trying to change. That's why it's called theory of change. We are changing something. We are changing something. And the theory of change is about, it's like a journey. It's a story that this is what the end change we want. This is what we want to see at the end of this endeavor. At the end of this project, this is what we want to see. But the theory of change will walk you through how are we going to get there, to get to the end, to get to the end result. In log frame, it's a grid. It's there, tack, tack, tack. It's like it's blocks, it's grids. But in theory of change, it's a journey. It's a process. It is dynamic. It is moving. And in the theory of change, everybody is encouraged to review, to look at, to reflect, because it really builds on, from the end change, you have to look at what are your assumptions? You know, what are your assumptions in order to arrive to that change? What are the intermediate changes that you need to get on before you arrive to your end change? And in the new format, it's called the objectives or sub-objectives, but they call them objectives in this new format of theory of change. And then if you achieve objective 1, for example, what are the expected results? When you achieve this objective 1, what would you like to see as outcomes? And then again, in order for you to achieve objective 1, for example, what are the activities? What are strategies are we going to tackle? So this is how it looks like. Let me just share my screen. Can you see? I'm trying to reduce so I can see my, yes.
Yes, it's very good, John.
There, okay. So this is the pathway of change. Remember, the theory of change is a way of thinking. It is a way of thinking how we approach problems, how we approach challenges. You can theory of change your life. You can theory of change an issue. You can theory of change climate justice, for example. You can theory of change climate crisis. It's about thinking, what is the end change given this problem, given this issue? What is the end change that you want to see, and how are you going to get there? That is the narrative. That is the process of the theory of change. And what I wanted to clarify here, so that it's very clear for us, what we are doing as a theory of change in this meeting, in this workshop, is the theory of change of our project. Only of our project, because there are various levels of the theory of change. A theory of change of a larger global issue, like an issue, for example, about refugee rights, but you can theory of change a program, like PSI's program on tax justice. You can theory of change that. But this one, we are only asked, our assignment, colleagues, is to theory of change our project. And so what is very important for us is to identify what is it that we wanted to see at the end of this project from 2023 to 2027. By the time we arrive in 2027, what is our end change? And that is called the objective of a theory of change in the template that we are filling up. Okay, so the exercise we're doing in here is, it also one assumption to know is that the log frame can be converted to theory of change. They are not contradictory. They're in fact related. It's like a grid has been transformed into a story. That's how you should look at it. The grid is now transformed into a story, a pathway of change. So you see, the task is easy. It is not something that should intimidate us. It is about just transforming from thinking in a log frame perspective, in a very grid-like matrix perspective, into a dynamic, a process, a moving perspective. And this is why there are arrows. You see, there is a flow because it is a pathway. When you go on a road, you go somewhere, you must know, where do you want to end up? What is your destination? And what are you going to do in order to arrive to that destination? And that is what theory of change is helping you. It gives you the stages. It gives you the way of thinking. It gives you the way of how you're going to go about it, who are going to be involved, who are you going to change, what are you going to change, and what is the end result. So we mapped it out from the project title, Unions Defending Human Rights, Climate Justice, and QPS for refugees and migrant workers in the MENA region. Remember again, colleagues, we are only doing a project theory of change, okay? We are not doing a theory of change of human rights, climate justice, or QPS. No, we are doing a theory of change of the project. So what can we change in the project is you, the unions, the capacity, the situation of the unions vis-a-vis this context of human rights, climate justice, and access to quality public services in terms of the situation of refugees and migrant workers and how unions are reacting or proactively acting on this issue. So that's why the objective is, the end change we want to see after 5 years is that there is strengthened role and capacity of public service unions in defending human rights, climate justice, and access to quality public services for refugees and migrant workers in the MENA region. You see, we answer, who are we trying to change? You, our public service unions, PSI affiliates, all of you who are partners in this project in the MENA region, in the 4 countries that we're implementing the project. And what do we want to see? That your role and capacity are strengthened. And why do we use the verb strengthen? Because in this current phase of the project is about building your capacity. So now we move on, we advance PSI's work, we advance your work into a strengthened role and capacity. And this is why this project, the end change is stated like that. So in 2027, when we all sat down together, have we strengthened the role and capacity of our public service unions on the issue of migrant and refugee rights vis-a-vis the contexts that are affecting migration, forced displacement, and refugee flows, which are human rights, climate crisis, and access to quality public services. And remember, dear colleagues, the phrase human rights, climate justice, QPS, they are not fluffy phrases. They are positions and strategies of the PSI. We are very, very clear what they are. We are very, very clear about what human and labor rights are. We are very, very clear about what the concept of climate justice is and what is the concept of access and defense of quality public services. And we're going to justify that very clearly when we write up the project application. It is all part of the narrative that we're going to draft. Is it clear for now on the end change and about the theory of change? May I get some reaction because I don't see the screen? Let me see. People seem to be nodding and happy and smiling.
I'm nodding.
Are we on the road together? Okay, we're moving on this journey of the theory.
واضحة. Yeah, it's clear.
Thank you. Thank you. We must be in the same, if it's a car, it's a boat, whatever it is, we are all in this journey together. And this is why theory of change is powerful, because we have to sit together and we have to see, we have to be in this journey together to what end change we're trying to do. Okay. I love the voices of the young ones.
We follow.
I put her back.
معك جمانة معك.
But maybe
okay.
we can mute our younger colleagues for now. Okay. So the end change is clear, a strengthened role of our public service unions. And in order to arrive to the end change, what are the intermediate changes that we need to achieve? And they are called the objectives in the template under a theory of change perspective. The intermediate changes. So when we achieve these intermediate changes, we can say that, yes, we have achieved our end change. And we define this ourselves. Union to union does not tell us what our end change is. They don't tell us what our sub-objectives is because we know our work. We are the unions who's going to make this happen. We are the unions that make society happen. So this is how we defined it, having learned from implementing this project. So how do we define what are the intermediate changes we have to reach in order to say that we have achieved our end change? Number 1, intermediate change, or we call objective 1, that unions are incorporating human and labor rights, climate justice, and the defense of quality public services for IDPs into their union agenda. And that's why it's bold and it's in blue, because union agenda. It means a lot of things. When the unions are incorporating this in their work, in their agenda, in their action, we can say that we are on the way to strengthening their role and capacity on this issue. And remember, colleagues, that we have the triple C's framework, okay? The triple C's that we are facing as the public service workers who are at the front lines: the climate crisis, the COVID, the pandemic, and the recovery from COVID, and conflicts and wars, because these are the three main challenges that really drives people out of their homes, out of their lands, etc. And these are, we have to always see this from this holistic perspective. Otherwise, we are at the danger of addressing migrant and refugee rights from a piecemeal perspective, not from everybody's perspective, because the triple C, COVID, climate crisis, and conflicts and wars affect all of us. Workers together, nationals and non-nationals, migrant refugees and native workers, they affect us. So this is why that triple C framework is very clearly expressed and explained in the project application, that we are moving based on this conceptual framework, that, the triple Cs. And this is why the three approaches: human rights, climate justice, and the defense of QPS. And do not worry, we're going to have a lot of capacity building on these big issues. We're going to continue building your capacity so that your role are strengthened, both our union partners and also our Swedish partners, so we can link national work with regional work and global policy. So that's the objective one, that unions are incorporating human and labor rights, climate justice, and the defense of quality public services. Oh, sorry, it should not be IDPs, for migrant workers and refugees in their union agendas. Okay, that's the first objective. What is the second objective? The second objective, or the intermediate change, is that unions are leading advocacy and alliance building at the national and regional level on issues of migrant and refugee rights. Okay, again in blue, advocacy and alliance building. This is a lot of things. When we see that the unions are leading advocacy and alliance building on these issues at the national level and at the regional level, meaning in the MENA region, on these issues of migrant and refugee rights, we can say that we are there, getting there to see a strengthened role and capacity of public service unions. So that's the objective 2. The objective 3, the intermediate change number 3, that unions are organizing migrant and refugee workers and defending their human and labor rights. So 3 key objectives, colleagues, that we can say when we have achieved these intermediate changes, or these 3 objectives, we are there achieving our end result. And you will see as well that I put in parentheses the union-to-union thematic areas, because we have to explain this in the template. This project, as you've seen in the concept note, feeds into 2 key thematic areas of the union-to-union, which is, one is social dialogue, and the other is about organizing vulnerable workers. And in our case, these workers are migrant and refugee workers. So objective 1, we're going to link it and clearly explain it as we are incorporating human and labor rights, climate justice, and defense of QPS into our agendas. We are actually addressing thematic area number 2, which is about social dialogue, because you're going to have social dialogue with your governments and also in advocacy and alliance building. You're using these issues for social dialogue and even for collective bargaining, because they're incorporated in the union agenda. So it addresses thematic area number 2 of union to union. And at the same time, it addresses thematic area number 3, which is about organizing vulnerable workers. Okay, so that's objective 1. Objective 2 is linked to the theme of objective 2, which is about social dialogue, very clearly, because this is about policy, advocacy, alliance building. So this really feeds into social dialogue for the unions. And then objective 3, which is about organizing, it's very obvious. It links to organizing vulnerable workers, the migrant and refugee workers. So this, dear colleagues, is how we're mapping out our pathway of change. We have clearly mapped out that this is our end change, our objective, and these are the 3 intermediate objectives or intermediate changes or sub-objectives that are going to get us there. Any questions?
جينيفيف أنا عندي ملاحظة مش سؤال معناها هجرة قسرية.
I have a comment. We have a forced migration, a migration that is moving in a very changing environment, and hence the challenges are very big.
Yes, very, very much so. In fact, sorry, I could not see the screen. Who was talking?
Mansoor.
Mansoor. Yes, Mansoor, and thank you so much for always updating us and documenting this, this very unfortunate and desperate situation of migrants and refugees in your region. And this is why, Mansoor, we are always approaching it from these 3 perspectives, okay? Human and labor rights, climate justice, and the defense of QPS, because the drivers of this forced migration are these triple C's: conflicts, conflicts and wars, climate crisis, climate change, and the COVID pandemic. Is that okay? Does that sort of answer for now? Okay, seems quiet. Or
it wasn't لم يطرح سؤال إنما ملاحظة فقط.
Okay.
It was just a comment, not a question.
Okay, thank you. It's good to start reflecting now, because it's good to see your map, your roadmap, your directions, because we're going to work on the next stages. In the theory of change, we're going to work on what will contribute to these changes. So we must all be very clear as a team, as the project partners, on the roadmap. Any other comments for now? You will have an opportunity to dive into this in the breakout group. Everybody is still reflecting on the pathway of change. Okay, so shall I continue? Yes, Magnus, please.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking that these objectives, what is the kind of baseline situation we are at in the different countries and unions, and maybe that's good to know, sort of, to to see when we are making progress and not. For instance, alliance building that has started in some points, and maybe it has reached to a certain level. But yeah, unions are leading advocacy number 2 and alliance building at the national and regional level. So how do we kind of see that we have really taken the next steps here when we are about to look back at what we did for these 5 years?
How do we measure, right?
How do we measure the progress of that? That is.
Yes, you see in the log frame, Magnus, we have indicators of achievements. But in the theory of change, we don't have that indicators of achievements. It's part of the process that when we review, we have to look at the flow. We have to look at the assumptions. We have to look at the expected results and outcomes, but there is no baseline. It's quite challenging because this is a new format. It's a new methodology. We're co-learning together. It's also one of my questions. The indicators of achievements are nowhere in the template of the objectives matrix, the one that we're filling in to describe our theory of change for the project. But what we can do actually is, because this is a continuing project and we have Gassan's report that we're going to review, and which actually, I would say that it actually does a lot of work for us already in terms of the analysis, the poverty analysis, all this analysis of many issues. And even there, we can see in the report, hopefully, where we are in terms of our capacity in advocacy and alliance building. And we have seen that in the project reports. So it's going to be challenging, but the best way to I would say attack or approach theory of change is we always come together and review step by step by step. And there's also the project reporting every year. So we can begin when we describe our project application in describing where we are at the moment in terms of these capacities, because this is a continuing project. And yeah, we can nobody is stopping us from using log frame in the reporting. Nobody. We will still continue to report as how we used to report, because log frame and theory of change, they are not contradictory. They can actually be complementary depending on our ability. And we are trade unions. We have a high capacity of learning. So we will all learn together. Other questions, reactions, colleagues, on our pathway? Okay, so yes, in this process, we are in the same car. Okay, we know where we're going. We have to be very clear where we're going and what are the steps to get there. So these are, I think we will have more reactions later as we look at the other stages of the pathway of change. And this is the pathway. These are the arrows, okay? Because everything is leading to an end change. So I will not start from the bottom. I will start from the next lower level of the objective. So when we want to achieve objective 1 about unions incorporating into their agenda these concepts, what would be the key assumptions? Key assumptions is the belief that that it has to be true. We have to agree that it has to be true. Our assumptions, we have to collectively agree together that we are on the same page. But sometimes we may have wrong assumptions because we have biases, we have different experiences, and that again is a challenge. And that's why a theory of change is always about dynamics. It's about process. It's really process heavy. It's about reflecting and reviewing all the time. But don't we do that in our life? We always reflect, what has gone wrong? You know, what did I assume that was wrong? That's why I could not achieve this. So but at this time, when we are preparing this project, we have to start listing the assumptions that must hold true in order for the objective to be true. Okay, so that is what assumptions are. And then we also have to describe what would be the expected results, the outcomes, when we can say that we have achieved objective 1.
Jen, sorry, but we don't have a translation to Arabic. Just a moment, please.
Okay.
You must repeat, I think.
Yes.
جمانة راحت الترجمة
يلا I'm checking.
إيه هلا عم نسمعك. So please repeat, Jen.
Assumption. Can I okay, I will start with assumption. Did you hear? Okay. All right. So you see, colleagues, objective. All right. What are the theory of change is about getting there. So this is the map. This is the roadmap. This is the direction. Okay. So in these 3 objectives, these are the big pieces of our work. So objective 1, objective 2, objective 3. And the theory of change is about how are we going to get there. And we have to be very reflective all the time. Like in life, we always reflect, you know, what is our assumption? What did I believe in? That's why I thought I could change this. Okay, so those are assumptions and we need to collectively agree on this. This has to be clear and this has to hold true, the assumptions. Assumption in tackling objective 1. And however, in life, we also, because we have biases, sometimes with what we thought was true was actually not true. And even assumptions during the theory of change process, during the 5 years, we can review it that, oh, our assumption was wrong. This is actually how we should think of it. You see, and we can correct this. We can do this in the reporting. We can reflect this. So, but for now, based on the lessons learned in our current project, we can build on certain assumptions for objective 1. And another path of the theory of change is, what are the expected results? Perhaps this also answers the question of our indicators of achievement, that when do we know that we are achieving objective 1? What will it lead to? What outcomes are we going to see? What results are we going to see? Okay, so this is what is called expected results in a theory of change. It's so much, it's different from the expected results in the grid of the log frame. The expected results here is also under the objective, that when we achieve what we can say that we're achieving objective 1 when we are achieving these results or outcomes. And then, of course, what will lead us to these results would be our key strategies. What would be our approaches, our activities, our actions that would lead us to achieve objective 1. So you see, in one stream here, in one column here, everything is complete. Your inputs in terms of what action strategies, what will you achieve, what will be the outcomes or expected results in achieving objective 1. They are based on what assumptions, and this is the intermediate change, the objective 1 that we want to see, which all of them will lead to the end change after 5 years. So it is the same in all the 3 objectives. We have to build the assumptions, the expected results, and the key strategies, actions, activities that are needed to get there per objective. Is it still clear for now? Is okay? Shall I continue? Comments, questions for now?
Yes, واضح.
Yes, it's crystal clear.
And could you maybe, like, an assumption, what could be an example of an assumption here?
I will show you. I already started building it because I'm part of the project. So, and of course you will also. So what I have done, Najwa and I have already started, is we already enumerated the assumptions, okay? And that is what we're going to look at together in the plenary. And then all the rest, the expected results and key strategies, we leave it to our union partners to just start talking. We're going to harvest ideas, okay? This is not definitive. We're just harvesting ideas here because we're going to fix that and supplement that. We put together all the information, including Gassan's report, everything when we prepare the project application. So if this is clear for you, the pathway of change, I am going to present to you the objectives matrix where we laid down the assumptions. Shall we continue? May I get a nod? Okay, thank you. Thank you. So let me stop sharing this and share the matrix. We're back to the matrix. Oh, sorry. Jumana, talk. Share screen.
Do you need any help?
For now, it's okay. I'm looking for the objectives matrix. Tak. Is it seen?
Yes.
We can see it.
Okay, okay. Let me just reduce my face and so I can see the template. Okay, so you see, colleagues, this is the template, one of the templates that we're filling up in the project application, the objective matrix. It is no longer called the log frame. It's called the objective matrix. And it looks very simple, but it has a lot of content. So we swap everything in the boxes, the project title, our objective, overall objective, which is our end change, and our 3 objectives, which are our intermediate changes. And then we started listing down the assumptions. Okay, so yeah, I don't think there is an Arabic translation of this. So Najwa, I will just read this so it can be translated into Arabic. And we can put this in, we share this in the screen so that you can also get this. You know, Jumana, can you put this to share so everybody can have an access in the chat?
This one in the chat, it's big. We can't put it. It's huge.
Okay, it's huge. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just Okay, if it's okay for everybody, let us discuss the assumptions, okay? Because the assumptions are very important. They are instructive for me and Najwa and the team in drafting the project application. The assumptions must hold true, okay? So under objective 1, unions are incorporating human and labor rights, climate justice, and the defense of quality public services for migrant and refugees into their union agenda. What are the key assumptions? We limit it into 3, okay? We don't put a lot. We just limit it into 3 key assumptions for now. I mean, yeah, otherwise we will never, yeah, it's just good to have 3 all the time because there are big chunks of assumptions. Assumption 1, that deepened understanding of unions of PSI position on labor rights, climate justice, and quality public services vis-a-vis migration and refugee issues will enjoin them to incorporate these positions into their agenda. That is the assumption, that when the unions have deeply understood the PSI position and strategies on these key approaches, labor rights, labor and human rights, climate justice, and QPS into vis-a-vis the question of migrant and refugee rights, then they will be able, they will be invited, they will be enjoined to put them into their union agenda. That is assumption 1. Let me just continue and we're going to do the reactions after. Under objective 1 again, what is the next assumption? That unions have access to training, capacity building, and IEC, information, education, and communication materials that they can learn from and utilize. Okay, so that's the other assumption. If they have that, then they can achieve objective 1. Okay, and the third assumption, that unions have clear, democratic, and participatory structures with which to shape and implement their union agendas. That's the assumption 3. Okay, so these, colleagues, are the 3 key assumptions under objective 1. Now, how do you want us to discuss this? Do we do the objective 1 assumptions first, and then we discuss, we feedback, and then we go to objective 2 assumptions, we discuss, we feedback, and then the objective 3 assumptions we discuss and the feedback?
Jan, Najwa.
Yes.
Yes, I think that if we discuss each objective with its assumptions first, let them يعني خليهم يعلقوا على
Let the participants comment on every objective alone. It would be better.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, let's do it column by column. Okay. Yeah. All right. So reactions on these 3 assumptions for objective 1.
كمان ممكن نقترح assumptions جداد يعني.
We might also suggest new assumptions. If you have any other assumptions that you wish to raise, please do not hesitate. Or if you wish to replace one of the assumptions, since you are well aware of the context.
Remember, only objective 1, okay? In incorporating labor and human rights, climate justice, and access to QPS, what are the assumptions? So, you know, that the belief must be true so that the unions will be incorporating them into their union agenda. So number 1 is awareness. It's understanding, and we're going to address this with training, capacity building, engagement in the project, etc. Number 2 is about having the materials, the tools, the materials that you need so you can incorporate this.
Magnus raised the hand.
Okay, and number 3 is that the unions are democratic, participatory, that they actually have democratic process wherein they can change the agenda. Magnus?
Yeah, I think it is true assumptions, but there are of course other assumptions to consider also. But For instance, there might be other issues at hand that the unions are dealing with or drowning in, such as in Lebanon, you have this kind of meltdown of the economy. So even if all of those three assumptions are true, they might be dwarfed by the other issues that totally dominate the agenda of the union. So one assumption is also how you can kind of connect the dots between this problem we are trying to focus on and the issues, the realities close to the members. How does this impact me?
Yeah, that's really good point, Magnus. I like it. Thank you. Because this is brainstorming. We have to be very, very wide so we capture the assumptions. Because if we don't assume that, we have a risk to fail. Okay. And you mentioned the situation, the economic situation that's really cutting across this. So how do we state that as an assumption? Maybe I'm just thinking out loud.
I am also just thinking out loud, but I was just thinking that how it relates to the reality of the union members, their more day-to-day kind of
I have a proposal.
perspective to actually make it a part of the agenda, so it doesn't,
Brilliant. That's a really brilliant point, Magnus. Thank you. What we can state as an assumption, if I may propose, is that unions understand that the economic challenges, the lack of access to jobs, somebody write this please, and lack of access to quality public services affect all workers. Okay, that they understand that it affects all workers, because if that is true, that assumption is true, that they understand that it affects all workers, then they would be willing to incorporate refugee and migrants' rights into their agenda. Would that be a good statement of the assumption? Najwa, you're taking down. It's really good. We'll add it. It is very, very important. Thank you, Magnus.
نجوى إذا جنفييف إذا بتسمحي لي بالموضوع الأول.
Najwa and Jen, could you please allow me to say one thing?
Yes, please, Isam, go ahead.
Regarding the independent trade unions and democratic trade unions, I would like to delve into that issue based on the exceptional circumstances faced by Lebanon. In fact, in 3 days, we would have the parliamentary elections, so on Sunday. And this automatically means that we would no longer have any government. It would mean that the vertical division is going to lead to maybe the non-election of a president of the republic, and that would be maybe in October or November of that year. So we have a major problem, the elections and the presidential elections. And also the Lebanese trade unions depend a lot on the political forces to support them to claim for their rights. In fact, previously the independence of the trade unions has been undermined, and so the Lebanese trade unions are now much more dependent from the political forces and their support at a time where now we have a huge political division in Lebanon, and this is going to reflect negatively on the population, of course, added to the unemployment, the collapse of the Lebanese lira, the economic situation, the financial dire conditions. So we have now new problems that we're going to face after the elections in Lebanon. So here we have to ask the following questions. How can we immunize the Lebanese trade unions and promote their independence so that they could have clear programs away from any impact and influence from the political parties? Because then the trade unions are going to be divided and they're going to collapse. We have huge challenges here as a Lebanon trade unions and PSI specifically, because the public services and social care and all of these fundamental issues are related to those trade unions, and these trade unions are dependent on having a government on which we can put pressure to activate the tripartite dialogue and to involve trade unions in those essential and urgent issues that need to be remedied. Your message has been conveyed. Thank you. But don't you think that here we are mixing up between the assumptions or the ideas that we have and the risks? The risks that we also have to take into consideration. No, yes, it's just that I'm telling you that we have clear risks that you are facing. This is what I'm raising specifically. I'm not asking for the program to be changed. I'm just saying that there are fundamental challenges that no other country has other than Lebanon. And we have to pay attention to that. We have to take that into account to see how we can find remedies and solutions and mechanisms that would allow us to continue with the program and to achieve its objectives. Thank you, Isam. Would you allow me, Jan? Najwa is asking you.
Let me respond first, Najwa. Maybe it can help. Thank you, Isam. It's very good point. This is brainstorming. No idea is a bad idea. No comment is a bad comment. This is harvesting ideas. And it is important. The elections coming up, the political situation vis-a-vis the trade unions situation. And Najwa is correct in saying that that is actually a risk. That is not an assumption. And so Najwa, make sure that it is in our risk analysis matrix, which you are going to lead us to, okay? It is not an assumption because in order, in incorporating trade union rights, QPS, and climate justice into your union agenda, the assumption is you have clear and democratic and participatory structures in the unions that enables you to shape your agenda, okay? And yes, there is the risk of the election that's going to affect this assumption, but that is called a risk. This is not the assumption. We are fighting to keep our assumption true. That's why we need to have also a risk analysis process, and this is the next step. Is that okay? I hope it clarifies. This is
Yes.
capacity building. The next time, yeah, we are all very good at theory of change. Other reactions, but it's good. Any reaction is a good reaction. Please, Asa, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, thank you. And I was thinking that, I mean, couldn't the risk be informative into what assumptions we have? I mean, we assume that there is a government that we can talk to have tripartite meetings. And if there is no government that's working, there is a big, that is a big assumption. And well, when we have a failed state, it's really hard to not consider the risk here has become, I see it as an assumption where we assume that the politicians are that there are politicians who can listen and who can do something. So I see it as a flow rather than just the risks on one side and the assumptions on the other. To me, I can see that the risks can inform us in what assumptions we take. And to that effect, I think that Isam's comment was very to the point. But maybe, I mean, it doesn't, I'm not saying we should change, but just bear in mind and try to see. We should, of course, there are so many assumptions, but we have to choose the most important ones. But to take it into consideration, like the big table of all the assumptions, and then picking from the assumptions the most important ones.
That's excellent, Asa. I completely agree with you, because assumption, when they become false, they can risk failure. Okay, and that's why you have a risk. We can always repeat the statement, but it's in how you draft it, in how you state your assumption and how you state your risk. And it is true. I see your point, and Isam, that political stability, political processes, the civic space are important assumptions that you assume that there would be political stability and civic space with which the unions can operate in order for them to democratically perform and incorporate our issues into their union agenda. So please, I hope somebody is writing that down because I'm just saying this from the top of my head. But yes, that is an assumption.
I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best, but we have the recording. Don't worry, Jan.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. So we
I'm
can
doing
say
my best.
as part of the sub-assumption under unions or next assumption, we can add a fourth assumption under unions of democratic participatory structures is that there is existing political stability or civic space that allows the unions to have the democratic space and civic space, something like that. Okay, we have to put that as an assumption because when something happens, hopefully not, to a country and it becomes a failed state, how can we have this incorporated in the union agenda when there is no government, right? So we can always come back to union and say, look, we cannot achieve objective 2 in a certain country because, like, you know what happened in Libya, it failed as a state. So we are again correct. And this is the beauty of the theory of change. Reactions? It's great. I love this. How about Tunisia, Lebanon, Jordan? Reactions on the assumptions?
Mansour says there's no traduction into Arabic.
It was from around half an hour ago.
Oida. Okay.
I think Mansour has a problem with his own connection.
Okay.
But the others can hear no the Arabic.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, Magnus.
Yes, Magnus.
Yes. Everybody can hear the Arabic.
We are going to, yeah, this is it's like a bull session. We have to look at the, we have to anticipate how we're going to justify this. And all ideas are welcome. Okay.
Jan?
Yes.
أنا عندي يعني شوي إذا حدا ما حدا بده يحكي.
If no one wants to take the floor, I would like to say that I agree with Asaf. And as far as I understood theory of change, I think that we have to put all the assumptions, the positive ones, the assumptions that would lead us to achieving the final objective 5 years from now. But this doesn't mean, well, she interrupts herself. In fact, there are assumptions. In fact, we are living in a region whereby we have a lot of conflicts, regional conflicts, political conflicts, the wars, a region full of problems. And maybe these assumptions or these emergencies or these changes that could happen in those countries might obstruct us and might impede us and might not let us get to that long-term objective in 5 years and all the relevant objectives as well. This is why, as you've said, there needs to be a flexibility. And this theory of change brings that flexibility to that program. When the program or project is drafted, its flexibility would allow us to take into account all of these changes that might emerge and that we might be faced with. And here I'd like to say that the most important thing with the theory of change is that it is all related to the community where we are living. Before, in fact, we would draft a project and we would link to it activities while assuming that these activities would lead us to achieving the objective. However, the new idea and the most important idea in the theory of change is that the activities are no longer the most important, but rather the most important are the assumptions and the changes that we introduce in the civic spaces in the community where we are living. This is why we always have to take into consideration that we are living in countries where we have too many changes. So what Isam said is that there might be emergencies that would obstruct not only this project, but many other projects. But this doesn't mean that you have to stop. This means that we have to reconsider new working mechanisms that would enable us to achieve the objective whereby we wanted to introduce a change in the community, not just in our trade unions, but in our surrounding environment and in the civic spaces where we operate. Thank you.
Yes, and this is why, Chahanas, there is one whole page of risk analysis, really one whole page. So we really have to, and they're very, very keen, union to union, in terms of template. Every objective has a risk analysis. Even the perspectives have a risk analysis. So we have to be as comprehensive as possible, because when we get back to implementing the project and reporting back on how we're achieving it, we always review our assumptions, our risks, okay? Because that is always linked to what we're working on, the end change. And I completely agree with you on that. Magnus, quick reaction?
Sorry, maybe it's not a reaction exactly on that, but I was reading here that the first one says deepening understanding of unions, of PSI's position on labor rights and so on. That maybe the understanding and training is not sufficient because we have been, for instance, in Europe discussing about migration since the big migration crisis, since the big Syrian migration crisis, and a lot of Europeans have said they have concluded to not accept refugees, even if it has been discussed more in the societies. Same with climate change. There has been more and more reporting about it, but it didn't lead to people taking necessary positions to address the issue in itself. So it's also a dimension of values that is maybe missing here, that what is the, how do we, it's not only about understanding and knowledge, these issues, it's very much about fundamental values of the organizations and people, if you are willing to prioritize it or not. Because I think both the climate crisis and migration crisis, it's not only enough to educate people about understanding it. You need to have a kind of transformative process of discussing the values of the union, for instance. Is this a core union value to address this issue?
Yes, I like your comment, Magnus. We can rephrase the first assumption to reflect the change of attitude and the alignment of values. I think we could restate it like, when there is deepened understanding, there's also a change of attitude and an alignment of values. That's why, you know, that the union values and attitude is now aligned with these concepts of human and labor rights. And maybe we could mention about, you know, non-discrimination and fighting racism. I don't know, but somewhere in this statement of our first assumption requires that our unions, our public service workers have actually understood, have been convinced, have their attitudes changed, and that it reflects their values too. They are in agreement with these values on human and labor rights, climate justice, and that's why they are going to incorporate them in the union agenda. Something like that. Maybe that can help, that, you know, if you assume, because yeah, you're right, that you can talk them into this, but I think, yeah, it's the deepened understanding and alignment in terms of attitude and values. Yeah, let's just put that. I will just, so we don't lose this. We will grammar check this later.
I think we've talked about these things also, that Magnus were talking about in other sessions, that I mean, just because we do an education on something, it doesn't mean we change our mind. Sometimes we have to change the way we do things and then understand why why we do it to go forward. And this is where theory of change is good, because then you can go back and forth and try and understand where we're coming from. And I guess that's something we can do continually during the project as well.
Okay. Yeah. And then if we haven't changed the attitude and values, then we could go back to, oh, we assumed wrong. We could not change the attitude. But that is, no, that's something that we are overcoming together. Solidarity work. Yes. Yes, we overcome that by really making all workers feel that we are in this together. We are facing the same poverty issues, the same climate crisis, everything together. So that's always what we're trying to achieve in this project. Okay, that's only objective one. And then, yeah, we have to add here the assumption about political, what did I say? Yeah, political stability, etc. Political stability, civic space. Yeah, that would allows TUs to have democratic, something like that. I will just refine this later with Nashra.
And civic space is interesting also. I mean, they always, in the reporting, we always have some questions just for civic space. So.
Yeah, it's really big section, especially in the MENA region. So Najwa and Chanas and Jumana are very busy drafting that, the civic space section. That is their specialization, especially in Algeria.
Algeria.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we are going to grammatically refine, but the ideas are captured, I hope. Okay, objective one. Shall we move along?
Okay, and we have added also the idea of Magnus of talking not only about understanding and learning, but also about values. I think it is, sorry, because sometimes I lose the, so you put it on the document, Jen?
Yes, it's on the document. You can see deepen understanding and alignment of attitude and values of unions with PSI position.
If you want me to write instead of you, I can.
It's okay. I can do it because I write as I listen. Okay, we're co-drafting. It's okay. Thank you.
Just a comment from Mansour in the chat that I need to translate, saying that political instability and non-respect of civic space could not stop a project, but it could delay or have an impact not to stop it completely.
هو يقصد عدم الاستقرار أكيد، مش الاستقرار، عدم الاستقرار.
Politically, I said Shahnaz, politically instability. يعني عدم الاستقرار.
Well noted, Mansour. Well noted. Well noted. Shall we move along?
Yes, to the second.
Do a breakout session. We're only starting.
نعم، علينا أن ننتبه إلى الوقت أيضا.
And we have to pay attention to time as well.
Yes, okay. I mean, ideally, this whole process should be 2 days together, but we're having this 4 hours online. So
yes,
let's be ambitious. Okay. Can I go to objective 2 now? Okay. All right. Objective 2. Unions are leading advocacy and alliance building. Leading advocacy and alliance building at the national and regional level on issues of migrant and refugee rights. That's objective 2. What are the assumptions? That unions have built their understanding and capacity to engage on migrant and refugee issues. 2, unions have good relationships and have built alliances with civil society and the wider trade union movement to advocate for migrant and refugee rights. 3, that PSI unions in the MENA are recognized as important stakeholders on migrant and refugee issues from the perspective of workers' rights. So 3 assumptions, colleagues. What do you think? Oh, sorry, I should not open things because so if I'm seeing the grid, is it covering the template?
المناصرة جينيفيف
Yes,
إذا
Mansour.
سمحتي.
Allow me, please.
Go ahead.
Advocacy shouldn't be limited to the civil society component, but as well international institutions such as ATF, all industry, etc., that as well encompass a number of trade unions and should be part of our advocacy.
Sorry, Mansour, can you repeat?
نعم أنا قلت جينيفيف
I have said to Jen, Najwa, or Shahinaz that the advocacy should be only limited to civil society components, but should as well cover other federations and institutions such as ATF and other unions and federations, that in order to have a bigger force, a bigger strength, and a bigger platform.
Yes. Yes, Mansour, definitely. Definitely when we say here, it's the objective is leading advocacy and alliance building at the national and regional levels. So when we say advocacy at the national and regional level, it covers government, non-government, civil society, other stakeholders. But in the assumptions that if we want to be able to lead advocacy as unions and alliance building, that we should have good relationships with our partners. And we've identified our partners as civil society and the wider trade union movement. Unless you identify other partners, or we can say other stakeholders. We can do that too, that we have built good relationships with and alliances with civil society, stakeholders and the wider trade union movement, so that we can cover everybody as part of our good relationships that we carry advocacy with.
Mansour,
is it clear, Mansour?
Mansour, can you hear us?
I'm sorry, it's only in English for now. It will be translated in Arabic later.
It is clear. It is very clear.
All right, good. Thank you.
Khulud has a question, maybe. Good evening. It's not a question, it's just an intervention. We in Jordan, the 3 independent trade unions that are affiliated to PSI and that are going to work on the project, we do have in the framework of our work and in that objective in a particular advocacy and alliance to build alliances not only with NGOs, but with organizations that are expert and working on migrant workers issues. And as I've mentioned in the beginning, Jordan has received very big numbers of migrant workers, and during the project, many issues will arise, and you will see all that on the ground, and we will need this advocacy in order to reach the objectives and serve the workers. The alliances should be alliances based on expertise, and we have as well an international alliance that we have to build in order to work on this issue and the project.
Thank you, Khalud.
Shukran.
I understand that, you know, academics and experts are important partners too, because they can also be our mouthpiece or other, you know, interlocutors. I just don't know if we have to list every single one of them, or we could just group them as stakeholders. Is alliances building with experts that important, and we want to put that in assumption?
خلود
عشاني بالسيارة هلا لا احنا ما بنقدر
I'm in
نذكر
the car, excuse me. We don't have to state them all. Some are national, as I've said. During this project, we will have a cooperation and collaboration, a constructive collaboration with, for instance, the trade union of farmers, because most of them are migrant workers, Palestinians, Egyptians, and from Asia as well. So those will be our national partners, while other institutions or organizations are organizations that we are going to communicate with in order to be able to reach our objective, and any support, assistance, and just even looking at their experience or expertise will help us to reach the objective we are working on.
Okay, thank you. I recognize that, you know, we have to partner with certain expertise as well, like what we do with and normally they are experts coming from civil society and also experts coming from activist academics. So it's also important, but all the rest, like for example, yeah, we also wider trade union movement. That means working with other trade unions in the other sectors like agriculture or whoever that we are not organizing as PSI. And they're definitely at the national level, but also we have to work at the regional level in the Arab sub-region. The global level is part of PSI, and we could just add this in the reporting, but we don't put that in the assumption, in the objective for now, because we don't know how much we'll achieve globally, but definitely because this project is linked to global policy, it's always going to be linked to global policy. But in terms of your work, it only talks about national level and by ambition, the regional level as well. So we cover, when we say stakeholders, hopefully we cover everybody. And when we come to the project reporting, we are going to identify these allies.
إذا بتسمحي لي في عندي بس نقطة
Allow me, I have a point related to Lebanon in that regard.
Please.
Actually, throughout the project that Najwa mentioned and my colleague Nisreen mentioned related to facing poverty and alleviating poverty, and that has an impact on the issues of migrant and foreign workers and refugees present in Lebanon, because facing poverty is, according to Lebanese union, done by reinforcing the social security net and incorporating the migrant workers. But after October 17, even the social security institutions in Lebanon collapsed. And now we need to support these institutions so they can go back to their level, i.e. covering 90% of the hospital invoice or treatment invoice, while now it is only covering 10%. Knowing that the cost of the hospitalization increased in Lebanon. So now we need in Lebanon new policies that go in line with the new situation in Lebanon in the context of facing poverty and alleviating poverty. But now we need a new vision, new projects in the framework of this project, so we can be oriented, guided in order to protect the right to work and to the right to compensations for Lebanese workers and non-Lebanese workers. I have something to add. Mind you, in Lebanon, more than 75% or 71% and above are under the poverty line, the extreme poverty line. So more than half of the population
no kind of any privilege whatsoever. Okay, so هيدي مشكلة كثيرة كثير. سوري جمانة عم تحكي مش عم بقدر اسمع. الو هلو ايه
عم نسمعك نحن ما حدا عم بيحكي نسرين.
I don't have.
Now we can hear you.
Okay. It's okay. Yes, please. Whatever suits you, Nisrin.
All right. I just want to mention that more than 71% of the Lebanese population are under the poverty. They are underpaid. They have no kind of any privileges whatsoever in terms of medical insurance or education or anything or wages. So yes, as my colleague Isam mentioned, yes, we have to have programs and projects to support or to cater the both population, the Lebanese population and the يعني العمالة المهاجرة, the migrant workers and the refugees. Okay, they are all in the same boat. Okay, so sorry that I described the Lebanese people as the migrant or the refugees in their country. Okay, so they don't have anything, no water, no electricity, no medical insurance, no nothing. Okay, so we need to customize the project for Lebanon.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Those are really important inputs. And when we justify this project, we are actually talking about access to jobs, access to quality public services, access to social protection for all, because that's the only way that we can advocate also for the rights of migrant and refugee workers when we are actually working for the benefit of all. We know that already. We learned that so much. It's difficult to fight racism when there's nothing in their stomach. So, you know, a lot of
yes, Genevieve, you cannot support your brother. You cannot support your brother and you're not eating if you're hungry. You cannot support your brother if you are hungry.
That's
okay,
why this
so this is what's happening in Lebanon.
Yes, this project should be well grounded. For this to succeed, it has to be fully and deeply grounded. So we are going, that's why we tackle this country by country, though the political, social, economic challenges are the same, the CCCs are the same, but it has to be well grounded. So we are noting that very, very carefully, and this is your job, really, when you implement the project, this is always in your thinking that it has to be well grounded. Any other reactions? Those are really, really good points. Thank you very much.
Jen, may I please?
Yes, Nashwa, sure.
نجوى. بس بدي أطلب يعني لأنه الوقت صار ضيق شوي.
Since we are not ahead of time, please let's focus on the tools that we have ahead of us in order to reach the objective and leave every concern or risk for the second session that is going to follow Jan's presentation, please. Thanks a lot, knowing that all your inputs are very important and valid, but throughout the project, we are going to be talking about risks. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Nashwa, for keeping us to the time. And Nisreen and Isam, take note of those because actually those are inputs and strategies, okay? The well-grounding, you know, that everybody has access. So they are part of strategies. You're just really ahead, okay? Shall we continue to objective 3? Thank you for the thumbs up. Objective 3? Okay, all right. Silence means yes. Objective 3, unions are organizing migrant and refugee workers and defending their human and labor rights. So it's about organizing. So what are the assumptions here? 3 assumptions. We have unions have the knowledge, capacity, and materials they need to organize migrant and refugee workers. 2, union agendas support the organizing of migrant and refugee workers. 3, unions are fighting for the right to organize for all workers, including migrant workers. Okay, so these are the 3 assumptions on the objective of organizing migrant and refugee workers. Reactions?
Well, I'm thinking about the legal aspects. What are the opportunities of doing it and the restrictions? It's quite different depending on the country, and I don't know if that should be mentioned here, perhaps, because it's relating to the advocacy part, that there might be advocacy for making it accessible, union membership for migrant workers, for instance.
Yes, in fact, yeah, Magnus, we thought about that quite hard, Najwa and I, in terms of does the right to organize, because, you know, the assumption must hold true. We could not say that the assumption is they have the right to organize. That's why we are saying that for our unions to organize migrant and refugee workers, they're at the same time fighting for the right to organize for all workers. And that's the strategy of Tunisia. That's why they are successful right now in organizing migrant and refugee workers, because they have fought for the right to organize for all, so that right now, when refugees and migrant workers cannot create their own union, they're actually being organized by our affiliates into their unions. So the assumption is that our unions are continuously fighting for the right to organize for all workers, so that they can organize migrant and refugee workers. That's the statement of the assumption. But definitely we are taking into account the civic space.
بدي أقول شغلة إذا بتسمحي لي جنفييف.
I have a comment, Jen, please.
Yes, Isam.
Concerning having the human right as a part of the agenda of the Lebanese trade unions, needless to say that now in Lebanon, it is a good formulation for the Lebanese trade unions, because that will give them more strength and a status of reference, so it can make sure that its presence is important, and that international criteria is very important and will give the trade union a way to exert more pressure on the ministries and the authorities in Lebanon. And maybe this time now is a very important time, so that the trade unions change their agenda and incorporate human rights as an important source of policies, because that will give strength to their requests and to the status of reference in the national sphere and international sphere way more than what is happening in the field, where the situation can be very difficult, knowing that trade unions are asking for international support and not sometimes abiding by the international criteria that it should implement at the national level. So of course, it is a very good time to exert the pressure, but that will need to train the trade unions and build their capacities so they can deal with human rights issues and be more trained on human rights issues, so they can really express about the human rights better, knowing that this issue didn't or wasn't very important or taken into account by the Lebanese trade unions.
Thank you. Thank you, Isam. Yes, the framing, the understanding, and really operationalizing human rights, advocating for it and applying it in the trade union agenda is really big. And it also means non-discrimination, that everybody has the same treatment. Najwa?
Yes, Mansour, it seems he's not able to talk, but he put in the chat in Arabic that an assumption could be to the respect of the bilateral agreements signed for example, WHO or with ILO to put pressure on decision makers.
It's an assumption for objective 3 for organizing.
Yes, he put it now. Unions are organizing migrant. Yes, concerning the organizing of migrant workers.
That governments respect their obligations.
International, yes, international obligation, all bilateral agreements.
But that assumption is not correct, right? Because countries like Nigeria or even Lebanon or sometimes perhaps Jordan or Tunisia, they don't, maybe Tunisia does, they don't actually respect those conventions they have ratified. That's why we have this project, to make them comply. So it is in a risk. It is a risk that, yeah, Najwa, note this down, that yes, countries do not respect their obligations to international human rights norms and labor standards. This is a risk, but this is not an assumption. But thank you, Mansour. It's a good risk to identify. Okay. Anything else? And we can start taking approaching our strategies and expected results.
Yes, Jen, I think that we should move in the agenda.
Okay. Yes, now just making sure that we deliver. We deliver the application. So yes. All right, colleagues. It's now the next level. Remember your pathway of change. We move on to expected results per objective. So yeah, I started putting in some ideas here, but Najwa and I thought it would be good for you. This is now your turn to frame, to identify in every objective expected results when the objective is achieved, and what are the key strategies and actions and activities. You have already identified some of them, like campaigning for access to social protection and access to quality public services for everyone, non-discrimination. Those are strategies, the thinking that it's really grounded, that it's about solidarity building. You have them identified already, but it's good for you to have this exercise. And yeah, once we prepare the project application, we are going to arrange them. But let's harvest ideas. The next session is harvesting ideas for the expected results for each objective and the key strategies, approaches, and actions for each objective. Najwa?
Okay. I will propose something. سأقترح شيئا للمضي قدما، وراحت الكهرباء عندي بعتذر. ان شاء الله ما ينقطع الانترنت. رح نحن نعمل
In fact, we are going to break you into groups, breakout groups, breakout rooms. Every group shall join one of the rooms, and Jumana can divide the rooms. But please tell me according to which logic. We're going to take the 3 objectives. We're going to be divided into 3 groups. Every group is going to talk about one objective, and then the report of every group should be presented, and it will be discussed in the plenary. Who is with, who's against, who suggests anything else? Your question is not clear, Najwa. So these 3 objectives should be assigned to expected results, kind of, yes. You should say what are the expected results, while taking into consideration the key assumptions. Of course, we won't have time to put the strategies. Let us just focus on the relevant results or expected results, she rectifies.
Najwa, how many minutes do we have?
30.
We have 30 minutes.
Okay, so if I may suggest, colleagues, I think we should be more ambitious. You don't need to review the assumptions because we already had a session on that. Basically, we all accept our assumptions now, unless some light bulb. We forgot an assumption, but it's good. Now the assumptions, let us spend the next 30 minutes in each group, and you decide how you want to divide yourselves. If you want to divide yourself per objective, or one group, one objective, or 3 groups tackle the 3 objectives, but together identify expected results and suggested strategies. We need your input on suggested strategies because you already know, you've been talking about this even in your key results and challenges you already identified. Just write them down for us so that it's really coming from you. So you have 2 questions. You have to identify key expected results for each objective. The second question is, what will be your strategies and actions for each objective? 2 questions you need to answer. So please decide if you want to do per group, you tackle the 3 objectives together, answering the expected results and the strategies and activities, or you want to assign yourself 1 group, 1 objective, and tackle key expected results and activities and strategies. How do you want to do this?
اوكي، رح اكتب الاسئله على التشات بالعربي. اوكي
نشوى اوكي، بس انتم بدكم تعملوا باي منطق مثل امبارح، يعني العرب لحالهم، كيف بدك نعمل؟ لانه
Should we follow the logic of yesterday? Mana is asking because we only have maybe 4. Let us see. We have Aysam, Khulud, Mansour, Naufal, and Nisreen. We only have 6 people. And myself and Shahnaz. You are 8 altogether.
بس بدي اشوف اذا جان بتفضلي تكون المجموعات مختلطه.
So we prefer that the groups would be mixed from the MENA, from Sweden, or each group would work alone for language sake.
Shall we take it by vote?
I'm thinking it's better if I stay out of. I want the local trade unionists to know the issues at hand, to talk amongst yourselves, and not me listening in and then I hear what you come up with afterwards. I think for me, I think that would be better,
اوكي
a better
لكن
discussion for in the groups.
اوكي لكن نجوى بنقسمهم قسمين.
So let us divide them into two groups. You and the Arabs alone, and them alone. Deal. I need some time. Let us write in the chat now, or when we are in the breakout rooms. No, when you are in the breakout rooms alone. But it's no longer 3 objectives. How are you going to divide them into 3 topics?
If I
No,
may
every group
suggest-
is going to work on the 3 objectives. Every group is going to work on the 3
Yes,
objectives.
I agree. I think it will be good. It's holistic for the group to look at the 3 objectives together. And when you do the presentation, you know, there will be repeating things. We just check off that it's being repeated, it's being repeated. But let's harvest ideas. Let's harvest ideas. Let's have the 2 groups, and the 2 groups will tackle all the 3 objectives and suggest expected results and suggest strategies and actions. Let's see what we can arrive at. Is okay? Good.
Okay, I'm gonna assign now. I'm assigning.
And Swepsi, that you're welcome to join the groups as you're comfortable. But yes, yeah, we have the 2 groups set up from our union partners in MENA.
Yeah, we would like to have a group, a Swedish group. That's the best.
That's
There will be a Swedish group and
Very
an
good.
Arab group only.
Very good.
Because the number is really small.
Very good.
That's
Okay.
good. That's good suggestion. Thank you, Maria. So we have the Swepsi, we have 1 group from MENA and the other group from MENA. Okay.
Jen, I understood that we will have only 1 group in the MENA and 1 group for the Swipsy.
Najwa?
Oh, is that the case? That's
Yes,
also okay.
because we are only 8 persons.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So, okay, I will join group.
What is room 1, room 2? What is room 2, Jumana?
It's your room.
It's my room.
Yeah. So it's 1 room for the Arabs and 1 room for you. For you and the Swedes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay, you just press on OK once you get the notice.
There is no okay. It's either stop and join and not now.
Yeah, just stop and join.
Okay. All right.
Alrighty.
What time do we come back, please?
In half an hour.
Like it's 16, oh, it's 09 in my time. So that will be 39 to the hour.
Alrighty.
Okay. See you.
See you.
Cheers.
منصور عم تسمعني؟ منصور، خلود.
جمانة.
ايه
انا سامعتك جمانة.
ايه كبسوا اون اوكي. في هلا شيء اجتكم شيء على الهيدا، كبسوا اون اوكي. جوين.
اوكي. اوكي.
اوكي.
كيف
نوفل
بكبس على
شيء
اوكي؟
ومنصور. منصور عم تسمعني؟ منصور ونوفل.
نوفل معك، كيف انزل
مين
على اوكي؟
نوفل؟ مثل امبارح كنت يا في ايار لا ميم شوز لو ميم بروسيدور بلوتو. بعدك نوفل معي انا بعد ما رحت على الروم.
ما وجدتها اوكي. يعني موجودة في الشات؟
لا هي موجودة، لازم تطلع على السكرين تبعولك على الإكران. تكبس جوين.
على الإكران ما عندي.
ما عندك؟ أوكي خليني أرجع أعمل لك عن جديد. ليك نوفل بدي دقيقة. دقيقة. move to دقيقة بس. move to هلا طلع لك شيء؟
اوكي
كبوس، وهلا برجع بشيلك من روم 2 بحطك على بروم 1. اوكي منصور عم تسمعني؟ منصور ما عم يسمعني. اوكي
وي جمانة.
ايه منصور، بعد ما فتت انت بالجروب بالروم بالسمول جروبس.
لاني كنت في الطواليت.
اوكي في هلا عندك شيء على الاكران فيك تدوس اوكي عليه سيل تو بلاي.
روم 1
روم 1
داكور.
يلا
ميرسي.
اوكي
جمانة
نعم.
انا بعثتك انت ونجوى بالنسبه للاخوه المصريين اللي باش يحضروا معنا في تونس.
نعم
الاخ الامين العام يقول لي يلزم الباسبورات نتاعهم الكل، واحنا ما نجموا ندخلوا كان على مستوى تونس. نراسلوا وزاره الداخليه حتى تمكنهم من تاشيرات دخول في المطار اكثر من.
وزاره الداخليه تبع تونس يعني؟
نعم
وزاره الداخليه تبع تونس
طبعا.
اوكي هلا بلا نجوى هي عم تتعاطى معه.
يعني ما نجموا ندخلوا كان على مستوى وطني هوني في تونس، اما ما نجموش ندخلوا في واحد اخر. يقول لي تعطيني المكتوب للاخت هاديه مسؤوله العلاقات العربيه والدوليه.
نعم.
وهي تقلب الواحد باسم الامين العام. والامين العام هو اللي راسل وزاره الداخليه. نجمه تعرفوا في الحقيقه هذه العاده. اما باش ندخلوا في مصر يقول لي لا ما نجموش وما عندناش باش نكلموا.
طيب اوكي هلا بقول لهم هلا بشوف شو بدنا نعمل.
داكور
ميرسي منصور.
ميرسي بوكو.
Tu arrives à joindre ايه منصور؟ اوكي يلا خي.
هاي التقنية بيشيلونا زي ما بيريدوا.
اوكي
هلو نجوى ضع الوحدة على
اوكي بس بتسمح لي اقول لهم انه شو راح يصير هلا دقيقه بس. راح بسرعه. اوكي جان. So it wasn't easy. ولكن عملوا جهد النقابات بالمنطقه.
They have exerted all the possible efforts. We are going to showcase on the screen what we have prepared so that the translator can read and Naufal is going to present. Do we need to have expected results for each objective, or any expected result can serve the three objectives? And I tend to believe that the expected result can serve all the objectives. In addition to what Najwa is saying, even at the level of work strategies, we felt that the strategies that we are writing do apply for the three of them, and distinguishing between them is difficult. So I will add that to Najwa. Naufal, I will share my screen.
Okay, sorry, it's in Arabic. ما لحقنا نعملها بالانجلي. فاذا
we didn't have time to write it in English. This is the Arab region group of work, and Naufal, I'll give you now the floor. The first objective, the trade unions work on including human rights, labor work, and climate justice, as well as the defense on quality public service in their agenda. The expected results
النتيجتين الأولى عدلت
We have two. The first, the unions amended their structure to include human rights and climate justice, as well as defending quality public services in their agenda, as expected in the Arab world. And the unions asked to implement the international conventions, laws, and constitutions, and national constitutions in the field of labor rights, social protection for migrant workers and refugees. Concerning the strategies, activities related to human rights and work and climate change, as well as the right to have access to
إدماج العمالة المهاجرة في الأنشطة
quality public services for everyone. Second, including migrant workers in the activities, especially in the awareness activities of the trade unions. Third, publish documents or code of conduct, including the related or the relevant requests, force advocacy and networking with stakeholders in order to defend the right of work. And second, social dialogue and consultations. Second objective, the related to alliances at the national and international and regional level concerning the rights of migrant workers and refugees. Expected result, the trade unions created a network of alliances, national and regional, for human rights for everyone. Concerning the policies, the participation of trade unions in the activities of the International Federation at the level of policies and human rights, and cooperating with the international organizations such as the ILO. And the third objective related to organizing the migrant and workers and refugees and defending their rights. The result concerning the expected results, we up till now, the legislations are not up to the level where the unions can work in an independent level. But it is possible in Jordan and Tunisia to have this, so we can defend the rights of refugees and migrant workers. Thank you. Thank you, Naufal.
Okay, I will stop. I will stop sharing. Okay.
Did we have objective 3 also?
No.
سوري
No,
لا
Jen.
لا لا بس بدي
لأنه
اقول
ما
انا
قدرنا.
No, we couldn't work on the third objective. Yes, says Isam. We have said that in all the Arab countries, the laws allow the migrant worker and foreign worker to be a member of trade union. Here, the objective is to activate this clause of law. Now I'm losing him. I'm losing Isam.
مثل ما عملوا او بغيره من الدول العربيه يفعلوا
And
القانون
our countries should activate this law that will allow to have commissions for foreign and migrant workers inside the trade unions. Hence, Jan, if you allow me, in addition to what Naufal said, the time is very limited to write the expected results and the strategies. But needless to say that we feel that everything is interlinked. when you have a general objective and dividing the results that way and the strategies that way is difficult. Everything is interrelated and interlinked. You feel that every result can lead us to another. And hence, when we were talking, when we were writing the strategies and the activities, we were noticing that the strategies were as well interlinked, and it is difficult to categorize them, at least for now. Maybe later on, when working, we might find a formulation to divide these strategies. That's what Najwa mentioned in the beginning. We were able in this small period of time to write this, taking into account that we are working in 3 different countries. We took the innovative experience of Tunisia of including migrant workers in their internal structures. And for that, Tunisia used a great networking and and exerted a lot of pressure with international institutions, so it was able to amend the work of trade unions and organized workers. And the government accepted that because it was something happening on the ground. We took as well the experience of Jordan and their project for a better work, where the ILO office in ILO imposed this project, and hence the government, the Jordanian government, and in order to implement this project, was forced to organize this migrant worker within the trade unions, knowing that up till now, migrant workers don't have the right to elect or to participate in elections. So this is how we try to discuss a little bit all these points.
Okay. Anything else? Hello? Okay. As thank you very much, colleagues. It's as we said, this is about harvesting ideas for now. That you're correct, not to worry about putting things in column. Just get those strategies and expected results out, and we will do our best when we comply with the template to put them into a structure in the formulation, in the proper formulation, but we are not leaving out the essence of the strategies and expected results, that they are going to be in the project, but they're just going to be fit into boxes as required of us. So thank you. Those are very important inputs, and also building on what the good practices that happen in Tunisia and in Jordan. And this will be, I look forward to the inputs in terms of the translation of the document from Arabic to English, so we can put them together. Are there questions from our SWEPC partners on the presentation? It's a bit silent right now. We do recognize this is really within 30 minutes. You cannot write up the whole thing. There will be other things that are we might be just supplementing based on what we're already doing from the previous project into the new one. But the inputs that you have provided in terms of the organizing and compliance with conventions, the social dialogue. Yeah, we put this together when we formulate the project application. Are there other things missing, important things missing in particular? it's already 15 minutes to the hour here, and we
Yes.
agreed to finish at 18:30 your time or 17:30 our time. So how do we proceed with this? We still have the risk analysis, and we have
Yes.
mentioned some of the risks already.
It will be very quick, Jen. I have, but I'm sorry, I prepared the model, the template in Arabic, so that the Arab could,
yes,
when they talk, I can write quickly, and there will be translation, of course.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Are we finished with the presentation for the expected results and the strategies for now?
We will develop it more.
Okay, yes, we will develop it more.
Yes, we will send you a proposal from all the countries. But with the time we have, you know, it's a bit challenging.
Yes.
Okay.
And maybe if you can give me 4 minutes to also give you feedback of our group, the SWEPC plus PSI, in our small group, just to give you a feedback. Is it okay? Yeah, like I will try to make it 3 minutes, just like in the UN, only 3 minutes for intervention. So we have a good discussion. It's really looking at the project and 3 key points that we've discussed. The question of, you remember in this current project, we're also tackling racism, xenophobia, and discrimination. So we will maintain this work. This is still very, very valid, and this is why in the framing of the project we have human and labor rights, and in the concept of human rights, it's the concept of fighting racism, discrimination, and xenophobia is very, very much part of it. We will be continuing on that work, on that path, as we build solidarity, as we build strategies, as we learn together on how we can achieve it, given the very difficult circumstances in the MENA region. For example, in Lebanon, where there is a big risk of the economic fallout. So we will continue doing this, and if there is xenophobia happening, we're going to continue calling it out, and we're also linking it to our advocacy days, the refugee days, the migrant rights days, and also the anti-discrimination day. So that's a continuing work, and we agreed that it's part of the project embedded in the human rights. The second is we all agreed that this is a really important project with the Triple C's framework, with the access to services. That is part of the objective of the project. This is why it's a very valuable project for PSI, not only for the MENA region and for our partners in the region, but this is where we generate a lot of learning for PSI, and we will continue to showcase this project and to defend this project as we are learning together. I think those are the those are the 2 key points, and we are going to there's really very strong support towards this project. Thank you.
Thank you. شكرا. Shall I start?
Yes, please, Najwa.
Okay. بس قبل ما أبدأ بحب
Before starting, concerning xenophobia and racism in the region, we should face the populist discourse used by our politicians, especially during the elections and the election campaigns. For instance, in Lebanon, and in order to have more votes and more support, politicians come up with wrong ideas related to migrant workers, and that feeds xenophobia. And many Arab countries, in many Arab countries, we see the same strategy. Let's move now to the risk analysis. Before we start, and since we have a few minutes left, before starting, let me remind you what were the risks that were taken into account during the previous or current project. briefly. I will be mentioning that briefly. I will share my screen. So, during the previous project, how can I move the screen, Jumana? Okay. So we had external and internal risks and 3 expected results. The first one, leaders and members of public service unions have a more understanding related to the rights of migrant and refugees workers and work on more inclusion. Allow me a second. The internal risks was lack of understanding related to the issues of migration and refugees and the resistance to inclusion because of racism and xenophobia inside the unions. External risks for this first result, the collapse of the economy in the countries, which led to more unemployment, and that was exploited by employers to treat the migrant workers in a bad way. The displacement as well led to an additional influx of refugees and migrant workers to our region. The second result, expected result, was that the unions created or were affiliated to networks or alliances in order to promote the right of refugees at the national level. Internal risks, and the trade unions didn't recognize that they should provide migrant workers with sustainable rights. The absence of cooperation between the government and the trade unions, and the trade unions are unable to deliver an important work related to refugees and migrant workers. External risks, the absence of political stability, which led to conflicts and violence. Second, the absence of a legal framework to protect migrant workers, and the presence of discriminatory laws, which make it very difficult for trade unions to protect and advocate for migrant workers and their rights. And that was specifically the case of Algeria. Third, the policies of the government were to make the refugees and migrant workers go back to their countries. The third expected result was that trade unions participate in the international and regional policy related to the rights of refugees and migrant workers in the framework of alliances with international federations. First risk, the absence of technical and financial resources in the trade unions, which impeded them from participating in international forums and meetings. The change in the leadership of the trade unions. And third, the trade unions didn't recognize the rights of or the issues related to migrant workers and refugees as a priority for the international and regional participation. And external risks, the turmoil, the political turmoil, which led to an additional influx of refugees. I will stop sharing my screen and we will move now to our project or to the concept note where we have mentioned 3 objectives. Up till now, we haven't mentioned completely the expected results, but I will be building on the objectives in order to say what might be the internal risks and the external risks. So I will share my screen again. So please, each and everyone, I ask you to give me one idea related to the internal risks that will impede trade unions from including human rights and labor rights, as well as climate justice and defending quality public services in their agenda. I do believe that the interference of parties in the policies of a trade union, that is a risk, internal or external.
Najwa?
عم بيدافعوا عن حقوق الإنسان وحقوق العمال المهاجرة.
نعم.
Najwa?
وي عم بسمعك تفضلي.
I'm hearing you.
Okay. Just to, thank you for the presentation of the previous risk analysis, which I think all of them are still very, very valid right now, and I would think so for the next 5 years. You've mentioned them in the presentation. For the template, actually, we are asked many different kinds of risk. One is the internal risks in relation to the capacity of the partners. And we are asked to assess them not by internal or external, but we are asked to assess them in terms of severity. And then we are also asked in terms of risk management to say what will be our proactive measures and what will be our reactive measures. So that's one question on the internal risks in relation to capacity of our partners. The second is the risk of corruption in the project. And then the third is risks connected to gender equality perspective. So it's also being asked. And again, in terms of responses in risk management, we are to give reactive and proactive measures. And then we're not even finished. We also have risks connected to the climate and the environment. So we're also asked to respond in terms of reactive and proactive. And then that's just the beginning. We have to do risk analysis of our 3 objectives as well. Objective 1, Objective 2, Objective 3. And we are not asked to do internal or external risks, but just to say what the risks are and how do we respond in terms of proactive and reactive measures. So it's a lot of work. It's big work, but the good news is we have so many risks identified already from our previous activity, from when we were planning this project. So they are still valid, but maybe if you have additional risk, we'll harvest ideas for now, and Najwa and I could just develop it further to fit into the template.
اوكي، لكن السؤال جان هو اذا عندكم بالاضافه للريسكس يلي ذكرناهم.
So Jan is saying, if you have any additional risks to mention, knowing that the risks that we have mentioned are still valid, if you have any additional risks, you can add them now. Jan mentioned the corruption. Do you think that this is a risk, and what be the mechanism in order to prevent such a risk? At which level, the trade union or the political level in the country? I think both. First of all, we have to talk about the trade unions. I don't know, Jen.
When you talk about corruption.
Yeah, it's a question in the template. the four institutional risks, if I may call it. We have to respond to them on risk on the capacity of our partners, risk on corruption in the program, risk on gender equality perspective, and then risk on the environmental climate perspective. So those are the four institutional risks questions being asked in the template before you go into the project objectives, doing a risk analysis of each of our three objectives.
Yes, we will. نعم سنقوم بذلك ولكن علينا أيضا أن
Yes, we are going to do so, but we have to explain what do they mean by the risk related to corruption. Is it at the level of trade unions, at the level of the nation, or both?
It says risk of corruption in the program. And I think PSI already has a response to this because we have a formulation on how we're going to address how we are addressing corruption in the program. So it did not ask in the trade union level, but it's in the program. So I think we could develop this together with UDIs.
اوكي رودينا كنت رافعه ايدك تفضلي.
Rudaina, the floor is yours. I just had a remark, but I think that Jen explained it. I won't say that we will have risk, but contradiction related to the risks of migrant workers and foreign workers. And decreasing the risk of unemployment and the priority. What the priority should we give to the national workers or the foreign workers? So Rudaina means that since we have high unemployment rates, the government will adopt policies to face unemployment, but might give a priority to the nationals, and that will have an impact on the rights of the migrants, or in the contrary, says someone else.
Yeah, it's already been identified in the risk analysis we did 3 years ago.
مزبوط راح لكم أي هو.
عندي سؤال لجين وقت اللي ذكرتي الأربع
I have a
مخاطر.
question. When you have mentioned the four risks, you have mentioned something related to climate change, and you have said that it is required to see what measures, the preventive measures that we can take in order to prevent that. Here I am thinking out loud. I don't have an answer. An issue such as climate change and the impact of climate change on the marketplace and the workforce, etc. How can we take a preventive measure in that regard through the activities that I am going to undertake, the awareness activity? How can I take preventive measures and proactive measures so I can sensibilize the workers and the trade unions in regards of the severity of climate change? The same goes for gender equality. And how the climate change has an additional impact on women compared to men. So related to the proactive measures that should be part of the strategies and activities, because such big issues we cannot have for them proactive measures, but through campaigns and activities. Here, I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know.
Yes, thank you, Chanas. Any idea is a good idea. Yeah. I'm coming back to you on this when we start filling in the template, okay?
اوكي فاذا بالاضافه يعني بس تقلها لرودينا انه تم ذكر
Rudaina, in the risks incorporated for the last project, we have mentioned that we don't have, or the absence of a legal frame which makes it difficult for trade unions to defend the rights of migrant workers. And maybe, as Shahnaz said, we need to develop strategies in order to face these risks. I think that everything was mentioned and all the points, all the risks are still valid. And we cannot say that now the migrant workers issue is a priority for trade unions, but and most of the trade unions are still not giving this issue a priority. And Jen, even in the past projects, we were adding a paragraph related to how we as trade unions can face the risks. In that field, I have something to say which will confirm what you were saying. Practically in the region, and we know that in all the countries, human rights are adopted and are enshrined in all the constitutions. But the problem is that the trade unions mention that on their agenda and implement activities related to this issue. And that will need awareness sessions, and changing of a structure in order to reach tangible result in that field. So we have external and internal results. So we have the policies of the government, of the IMF, that might be at the expense of our values. And sometimes we, as trade unions, we are sometimes ignorant of the international criteria and international rules, and hence won't take the right measures to protect workers, and won't conduct networking activities to uphold the rights. So sometimes we have one thing and it's contrary. And what we have done previously explains very well the situation. And if we were able to abide by the expected results and the strategies that we have talked about, I think we would have done very well. So Isam, if I understood well, and as Shahnaz said, when we work on a strategy, we have to take into account the risks. That's what you want to say, right? 100%.
Okay. I note in the chat that yes, and also we have exceeded the time already. Again, our aspiration is we should have like 2 days for this, but what we can do for now is really to develop further what we have already started identifying in the risk, and completely agree that the risk and strategies in the theory of change is always balancing. So the points were there, the ideas were there. We'll just have to continue developing it and to complete the template, because we are running out of time, and this will be presented back to you anyway once the team has drafted the application.
On the 24th.
Yes, that is our risk. In the next 2 weeks, we have to start drafting all the project applications.
اوكي اوكي بعتقد انه اللي بقدر اقوله انه نحن كمنطقه عربيه رح.
So what I can say is that we, as an Arab region, we are going to develop this work, because as you've mentioned, Jen, it is very challenging to do a planning meeting via Zoom during 4 hours only. Usually it would have taken 2 days and in a very remote place where we do all the brainstorming away from everything. We used to do it in Brumana here in Lebanon. So it is very difficult to come after work and start analyzing and discussing. But I think that we will keep on communicating around these very important subject, and that's everything for me. And I suggest that we close the meeting unless someone has a final word. Thanks a lot. Thank you for this meeting. We were very pleased to be here, knowing that we have wanted additional time, but everything went well. Thank you. Thank you, Naufal. Anyone else before we close? I just have a suggestion, Najwa. The documents that we have worked on, we should review them a little bit based on the discussion that we have, and then send them again so we can have a very strong foundation for our upcoming project, because now we have a clearer idea when discussing about all that. So if you don't mind, we need to have back our documents, work on them again, and then send them back to you. That was needed, Isam. That's what we are going to do. So in order to summarize our meeting today, should you wrap up, Jen, or shall I continue?
Let me just say a few, let me just say a few words. Yes, this is, thank you very much to everybody. We recognize the time pressure, all the limitations that we have, but we did so well using the technology that we have. Imagine bringing us all together in 4.5 hours to start the project application. What we have achieved here today for me is that we are on the same page. We all understand what our project is. We have seen and we have agreed on our pathway of change, the flow. So that is very important achievement of today. In terms of information and inputs to the project application, you have said many things. We have noted them down, and they will all be incorporated into the project application. So I think for me, we have done so well, given that we only had 4.5 hours and it's virtual. And a lot of the work will be in the next 2 weeks to put together all those information, your contributions, all the discussions into the template of the project application. And then we are going to present them back to you, how it looks like with all the information we put together, plus the other missing parts that we are still going to develop, but still also in line with what we have agreed today. So from my part, I thank you so much for your time and for your contributions and for bearing with us in these limitations. But yes, this is a very, very important project, and everybody is really committed to this. So we're going to make a really good project application. Thank you very much.
شكرا جان. حدا بيحب يضيف شيء قبل ما نختم؟
Would you like to add anything before we close? Allow me from my part to thank you all, to thank all the participants from the Arab region and from Sweden. Thank you for your patience. I know that you have many other meetings that might be similar to this meeting. I wish you all the luck, courage, as we say in French. Thank you, Jan. Thank you for helping us. And thank you for, because you are doing the big part of this project, to be honest. Thanks a lot. Thank you for all the Arab countries, to Jumana, Faten, Shahnaz, and thank you. I would like to thank the interpreters, and sorry for the delay. Thank you all. I would like to ask all the participants to save the date, May 24, 2022, which is going to be the date of the presentation of the project application. Allow me to go back to the agenda so I can give you the timing. 12, that will be 11 a.m. in Europe, till 2. We will have more participants maybe during that meeting, and that's everything. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.
بلشوا بالكتابة يا جماعة.
يلا باي.
يلا باي.